workers will continue to resign in fear of losing their pension. To suggest that the engagement at Netleg would change the situation is a delusion. We all know that policies goes to Netleg to die, and government in particular does not like Netleg processes serious. We have seen with the introduction of national minimum wage, it was only sent to Netleg to disappear. We now know that the amendment of this pension fund and provident fund, the only intention was to use it as a collateral for this government to get a loan from IMF so that it can get a loan to finance the nuclear bill, which will cost the country 1 trillion, which is the total budget of the country. In the face of job losses, in the face of all the social ills that this country has, but this government wants to prioritize a loan out of the money of the workers. We call on all workers to discontinue with COSATU-affiliated unions, with immediate and associate with unions that truly represent the interest of the workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Nkomo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. This bill, which speaks to the annuitization of retirement benefits for provident funds, has invoked major criticisms from trade unions. And I would like to state at this moment that when we talk about trade unions in the committee, the chairperson, I think, when he came here to the front, spoke about COSATU and then other trade unions. And I've always reminded the chairperson that AMCU is the other trade union, and it is actually your children as well. So he cannot just pretend as if he doesn't know AMCU today. He knows AMCU. And this has led to the agreement which governments last week that the implementation of the annuitization regime will be delayed until March 2018. Whilst the ICASA Freedom Party understands this postponement, with implementation of annuitization could potentially have a negative impact on savings, this should also be balanced with the rights of the person to have the full access to funds accrued in his or in her pension. Honorable Madam Speaker, when a person who finds him or herself with a large amount of outstanding debt, says, for instance, on a mortgage bond, should that person not be allowed to settle the mortgage bond? And if they so choose to do so with the funds from their pension fund, can they do that? Whilst we do encourage savings, we also offer that it should be every person's right to settle immediate debt and be pension fund with the pension fund monies, and this would save substantial interest payment for their creditors, with the caveats, of course, that they do not then become a burden to the state once the pension fund have been exhausted. In respect of the mooted 2-year postponement, one must also be mindful of the fact that such a postponement does not automatically guarantee that after this period, the parties will reach an agreement. This kind of uncertainty does not augur well for the industry. And in this respect, we support the recommendation that the discussion paper on social security reforms be tabled within 3 months of the promulgation of this bill, as well as the report by Treasury to the Standing Committee on Finance and on a quarterly basis, and the Minister of Finance to appear and report to Parliament on a biannual basis on the progress of negotiations in this matter. In conclusion, we agree the harmonization of pension funds, the retirement annuities, and the provident fund is vital so as to ensure equal and fair treatment when it comes to taxation and access to benefits at retirement. And once again, I would like to repeat, COSATU and AMCU are both your children. Thanks.
Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Members of this House, let me start off by saying that the intention of ensuring that you save 2/3 of your money and get it in monthly installments and get 1/3, which will be tax-free, was done with good intent. And that was in good intent because what we found is that people repeatedly, when you receive large sums of money, now when you've never had large sums of money previously, and if you've got R1 million, you think it's going to last 1,000,000 days. But if you don't know how to spend that money, it will be finished in 30 days. And what happened was that more often than not, we found ourselves in debt. We did not provide for the old age. So as a result of that, this issue of ensuring that you put two-thirds or 66% of your in an annuity and get monthly pension, that was the rationale behind it. Now, the National Freedom Party supports a postponement. And one of the reasons we support the postponement is it not because there's something wrong with the intent, but because we believe that if there are parties that are not happy, then further consultation must take place. And it is for that reason we believe that let us go back. At the end of the day, it is the people of this country that we represent, and they must be part and parcel of the decisions that we make, because it affects their lives. Now let me tell you, when we talk about members in the community who do not know how to manage their finances, I can tell you time and time again, there are members or former members of this House, when the term is over, they cannot provide for themselves. And it is for that reason we want to put in a mechanism to ensure that you are able to get an income for the rest of your life, and should something go wrong and you die before that, then what would happen is your beneficiaries will enjoy the fruits of that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think in light of that, the National Freedom Party believes that in 2 years, I think it gives us enough time to consult with all the role players, consult with the labor unions, consult with the people on the ground, and ensure that when we reach a decision, that decision is going to be in the interest of the members that we serve. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Nkwankwa.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I think the resistance that you get, that is you, the governing party, got from the members of the public and various stakeholders around this matter, reminded you of a very important clause from the Freedom Charter that the people shall govern. I think beseni libel. Masithi uyazi go ndansemakhaya umakhulu sahlango ya deputy president. Sihambe siye eNtlombeni sifike sixhense phana. Kubekho ingoma ezawuthi apha ekhaya ndayimunamuna ndodwa ndayimunamuna. Uyazi ingxaki Deputy President nani colleagues is that if we don't deepen consultation kwezi issues aba ne problem. Because uthi uyimunamune wedwa kokweni bekanti ubutsala wedwa khange ubatsala abanye abantu. So it goes back to what I said, the people shall govern. Itsho iFreedom Charter yinu ayiso yethu. Kodwa yethu sonke. So it means now you had a situation where abasebenzi in particular and various other stakeholders felt like a consultation wasn't done properly. So you can't blame the people of South Africa for feeling that you were doing a smash and grab on their money, because they didn't know what you were trying to do, even though it was well-intentioned, but it wasn't communicated properly. Nambe no toy toy. Ileno nsitike ngokusana ukuthi ngabasebenzi banibonisile inena ngenyaniso uba ugqitha phe edutyo kwibhodi ebhalweyo. Ithi la bhodi siyaqhoba rhulumente asimanga siyaphambili. Andithi abasebenzi bayanibonisa ukuthi uba nimile ninani iziko ubona ithethe nabazawuqhuba banishiye mongameli. Ngoni icinga uba nibheka phambili kanti nijikeleza ku-traffic circle. The other issue which is also very critical and important here is that rather than ukuthi sibaforce abantu ukuthi mabasave ngenkani, we should provide more tax incentives, Mr. Minister. To say ukuthi sibavumela njani ukuthi i-carrot and stick method that can work in this instance. Because at some point we need to be able to find middle ground before the 2018 deadline, which is very critical. Kuba look, you also don't want people ukuthi ba retire be poor. But I don't think we should stress this point about over-indebtedness too much without actually addressing the causal factor. We are poor as African communities. We don't earn enough money. There are socio-economic challenges. We have many dependents that cause us ukuthi siyoboleka imali in order to put food on the table. Uthe omnye ibingathi ndiqhwatywa sisithunzela ndihambe entsimini xa ndivusa lo tata wathi mntanam xa ndisamkele i-5,000 inabantwana abalishumi uthi ndizayakha nini indlu kuba kalona xa sendipenshini lanzuba nayo xa ungazundinika imali yam uthi inkomo ndizayithenga ngantoni baphela kubuciko nesingesikhulu ndaqala ndayiqonda ukuthi itye konzini. So we need to consider all those factors, obviously, as good as the African communities. We can't keep on saying the international community and so wants patronize about. This is South Africa. We have different conditions and challenges. It's a fact. We are the second most, we are the one of the highest level of inequality pays. It means we need to take drastic steps and try to bring other stakeholders on board.
Enkosi.
Oh, Mamul Gadilel Clash.
Ndiligadi. Honorable Albert. Honorable Albert. Honorable Lee. Lees or Lee? Lees.
Yauzwa galabanga batu mazamba, Madam Chair. Ungayisebenzisa nayo leyo nto. Madam Chair, most of the public concerns about the preservation of pension and provident fund contributions and the annuitization of the benefits are misinformed and are myths. It is a myth that the government employees pension fund members are affected by the 2015 Tax Laws Amendment Act requirement to annuitize. It is not a myth that there is a possibility that the law will be changed to force pension and provident funds to invest members' hard-earned savings through the PIC into dodgy ideological ANC projects such as the NHI and the nuclear build. It is a myth that annuitization is not good for workers. It is not a myth that savings levels in South Africa are very low. Household savings in the third quarter 2015 were a mere 0.2% of GDP, and they fell to 0.1% in the fourth quarter. Poverty for the elderly in their golden years, after working hard for their families and for the economy of the country, is just not right. The poverty makes elderly people vulnerable to be exploited and left destitute by the sharks that circle the leaky old tub the elderly so often find themselves drifting desperately around in. It is a myth that Provident and pension fund members have to resign their jobs to take their pension money before the government takes it. It is not a myth that most current Provident Fund members will probably never take their pension money, have to annuitize a portion of their pension money. Amanga kuti abantu abakhokhayo e-Provident Fund njengamanje akuvunywa ukuthi bathathe leyo mali. Amanga lokho bangayithathi umthetho ayivimbi. Iqiniso kuti noma ubani angayithatha yonke leyo mali. Umthetho onjengamanje ayivimbi lokho. Amanga laba bathi uhulumeni uzothatha imali. It is not a myth that Provident Fund members will now benefit from being able to deduct their contributions from taxable income. Workers may well take more money home in their pay packets in terms of the new Act. It is a myth that the postponement by 2 years will see COSATU suddenly agreeing to annuitization. It is not a myth that a delay of 2 years will simply delay the implementation and will not be in the interests of workers that COSATU claims to represent. It is a myth that this midstream reversal is a minor issue. It is not a myth that the policy uncertainty that currently pervades government in South Africa is stated by most investors as being one of the major reasons for not wanting to invest. This debacle with the flip-flopping on the annuitization is a good example of ANC policy uncertainty. It is a myth that the comprehensive social security reform paper will result in massive state funding for pensioners that will make savings for old age redundant. It is a myth. As urgent as the DA agrees that this reform is, it will not be a single event, and it will take a considerable amount of time to be drafted, and implementation will of necessity be piecemeal. Madam Chair, it is not a myth that the changes to annuitization of Provident Fund benefits now enacted have started a process towards a comprehensive social reform and must not be reversed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Siyabonga lungu ehloniphekile. Ngicela ilungu ehloniphekile uThobayas.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy President, Honorable Members, basebenzi bethu abahle, dumelang. Honorable Chairperson, please allow me to quote Ho Chi Minh, a brilliant thinker from Vietnam, when he reflected on national virtues. And he had this to say, I quote, "The revolutionary must be endowed with virtues, without which, however talented he may be, he cannot lead the people," close quote. And having listened to the DA's Honorable David Maynard and Honorable Liz, I'm left with no choice but to realize that they are not revolutionaries, therefore they doesn't qualify to lead the people. Again, their talk reminded me of the brilliant thinker Albert Einstein, when he said, two things are infinite: the universe and stupidity. And you know what he said, Deputy President? He said he is not sure about the universe, but definitely he is sure about the stupidity of the DA, which was displayed today. We, as the African National Congress Standing Committee on Finance, acknowledges the importance of alignment and harmonization of retirement reforms based on international norms and standards. We also engage stakeholders on several occasions as a build-up towards the adoption of the bill. However, we heed the acknowledgement upfront that we did not reach consensus, and I want you to listen carefully, Honorable Steenhuisen, because you always prefer to howl and not place an intellectual engagement. Just listen to this. It's going to help you. This is going to help you. We did not reach consensus on the matter of annuitization, and we have referred the National Treasury and the unions to further engage on the matter. It will address the concerns of the NFP. We have postponed this to March the 1st, 2018. This deferment will give all stakeholders an opportunity to relook at the design and the model of annuitization. COSATU, for your information, has agreed that there is totally nothing wrong with harmonization and alignment of the current pension reforms. Therefore, the Provident Fund, from the 1st of March 2016, which was few days ago, is ineffective. So it's not true that for some reason we succumbed to COSATU. In case you have forgotten, the bill is a legislative amendment to the Taxation Laws Amendment Act based on engagements we have had. It's an amendment, and at no point, except to insult COSATU, have we ever heard of a single recommendation made by the DA, even here on this podium today. That's a fact. You said nothing. We have pursued the sector to reconsider our position as the ANC on retirement reforms, especially to think about the importance of saving. But we respect the decision of the workers. Those who will decide to take the 1/3, it won't be tax-free, it will be taxed, and they will go home with less. That's what we said needs to be explained. In terms of the annualization, we'll take the discussion further. This piece of legislation will continue to encourage savings culture, given difficult challenges that South Africans, particularly black people, still experience when they retire and find themselves depending on state pensions. Empa ha re ka leka ho lokisa mathata ao re tobaneng le ona, re fumana hore ka hare ho ntlo ena e hlomphehang ho na le maloko a tshwanang le DA a sa utlwisising nalane ya motho e motsho ya tshotleho, mo o fumanang hore ha motho a tlohella marapo mosebetsing a leba hae ho ya phumula, morokotso a o fumanang ha o lekane ho mo phedisa ho fihlella a ikela boya batho. Mokgatlo wa DA o batla hore tjhelete yohle eo motho a e sebeleditseng e tsetselwe ho di-insurance ka sekgowa e bitswa annualization. Ebe he motho o lapa le bana empa a sebeditse ka thata ka dilemo tse ngata, jo bona ke boqhitelo ba mohlolo. Therefore, honorable members, please allow me to repeat what Aristotle once said, and I quote, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." Close quotes. I therefore call upon stakeholders to consider the suggestion made by the National Treasury on the need to encourage savings, as this will result in good investment at a later stage. However, I also call upon National Treasury to speed up the process of the Social Security paper, which has been requested by the unions to facilitate closure to this matter. And to David Maynard, the Dancing David, as usual, being the best choreographer, his hate for COSATU makes him lose his intellect.
Madam Chair, over here.
Order.
I believe the Speaker should have been talking about the Honourable Mania.
Honourable Member, are you referring to Honourable
The
Mania?
Honourable Dancing David Maynard, the usual, that is being his usual best, the choreographer. His hate for COSATU makes him lose his intellect, if there is any. Consultation that we had with COSATU actually demonstrates the level of maturity that the ANC possesses in resolving complex issues, which has seen ANC being the oldest political party on Mother Earth. The oldest political party on Mother Earth. For the EFF, Honourable Khaula, the role of the party of revolution can't exchange hands. The principal task of the ANC is to deliver the national democratic revolution, and we are on course. We understand the lack of clarity of thought by the EFF, given the fact that they are still on a sharp learning curve. We forgive you. South Africa is a mixed economy and will continue to address the interests of progressive forces of this.
Order, Chair.
Honourable Member, what is the point of order?
I think the fellow honorable has missed the point that we are arguing. We're supporting the postponement of the
Thank
bill.
you,
I think
Honourable
he's
Member.
misunderstanding us.
Can you take your seat? That's not a point of order. Honourable Member,
Honourable
can continue.
Khaula, raising the nuclear energy issue in the context of this debate is at least absurd, to say the least. We need to be responsible leadership. On the IFP, AMCU has failed to adhere to the call to present itself to the public hearings to air their views, even when we had them twice. So the committee can't be blamed for AMCU's failure to participate. But thanks, Mams Bongile, for the recommendations you made on harmonization and alignment. Honourable Chair, we accept the call to further consult. Hence, we accept the recommendation made by the NFP. Honourable Nkwa, it is not true that enough consultation has not been done. We agree and accept that there are elements of disagreements. Therefore, we believe in the principle for engaging and influencing one another, which is what we are going to do for the coming 2 years. We have already provided a free incentive for the first 1/3 of the land sum. It's tax-free. It's a benefit. So I don't know what are you referring to. Honourable Liz, you are the most outspoken member of the DA whom we have always thought you are reasonable. But today, you are a true mythical character. You show it. Annualization might be good to the privileged, who happens to be white, but might not necessarily, in the current conjuncture, benefit those who suffered in the past. It is not a myth that the reality is that most of the people who are still poor and are black, people who Honorable Lees and his DA does not represent. We as the ANC believe in the quality of all black and white and will continue to represent the interest of all as the only custodians of a democratic society. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Minister.
Deputy Speaker, let us first greet all the workers who've taken time off to be with us here today. Can you applaud them, because they can't applaud? Secondly, let me thank the chairperson of the committee and all the members of the committee for their contributions. Don't you have anything more sensible to say? Really, no, come on, wake up, man. Anyway, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank all the unions and the industry for the contributions that they've made to the debate, but more importantly, to reaching a consensus on the way forward. We've agreed as the Treasury and as the Ministry to postponing this matter for 2 years, the matter of annualization, because firstly, it's a long-term issue. The decisions we take today affect not just today's generation, but many generations to come. And secondly, we would prefer from the government point of view consensus on this matter rather than an adversarial approach to this question. Let us, I want to appeal, forget about where we come from and what our differences might have been, but let us look forward by focusing our minds on firstly completing the consultation on the design of annualization and savings through annualization so that the views of workers and various constituencies can be taken into account and their serious concerns about how they pay for a mortgage or how they pay for unusual or unintended or unanticipated events in their lives using monies that they've actually saved through provident funds. We must also agree, and Treasury has agreed to this together with the Minister of Social Development, that these discussions must now take place in the context of the broader Social Security reform paper, and we've committed to finalizing that paper within the next few months, 3 months, I believe, in order that we can get the discussion on that going as well. But importantly, we need to, and Treasury has begun the process of launching a campaign to inform workers about what is the need for savings, how savings can actually benefit them, and how they could actually balance the requirement for savings and the requirement for expenditure either at a day-to-day level or the unusual events that I referred to earlier on. What is crucial is that we receive, through this consultation process, earlier rather than later, very concrete feedback from workers themselves about what are some of those needs that they need to want us to take account of so that the design of the savings process and the annualization can take account of that. At the same time, let us also be emphatic about the fact that workers, as of the 1st of March, are better off because the tax allowance that people who save in pension funds are the tax allowances that are now also made available to workers who save through provident funds. So your salaries will be a little bit higher because that tax deduction that I think Honorable Kawula was talking about is already in place. What we should recognize is that there are some key pillars or principles that we don't want to sacrifice in this process. The first is that savings is important and that we need to make it part of our culture and, as Honorable Lees was saying, increase the level of savings compared to GDP in our country to match some of the better practices that we see elsewhere in the world. Secondly, harmonization at this point in time between pension funds and provident funds. Thirdly, that we need to accommodate needs that might not have been taken account of up to this point in time, regardless of what was really an extensive process of consultation. And fourthly, the arbitrage or abuse that higher income earners have been taking advantage of or utilizing between pension funds and provident funds not be allowed any further. We must also emphasize what is not true, as many speakers have pointed out. It is not true that it is government that is intending to nationalize pensions. The money that is in provident funds and pension funds belongs to the workers and others who contribute to those funds. Government has no intention to nationalize this money. It was incorrect to actually advance that. Secondly, that vested rights, that is, anything that you've accumulated up to the end of February 2016, remains yours under the old rules. The new rules don't apply to that. And that was also somehow confused in this process as well. That consultation did take place, as the chairperson and others have pointed out, but let's allow for a further period if that is actually what is required at this point in time. And it's absolutely correct that GEPF contributors, or members of the public service in South Africa, are not affected by the provisions that we are talking about in respect of provident funds. As far as policy certainty is concerned, many elements of the bill, the original bills, remain in place, for example, harmonization. And it is true, we as government are committed to creating as much certainty as we can in relation to this particular set of provisions and other provisions as well. And in the course of the next few weeks, we'll hear a lot more about it. Now, in response to Honorable Mania, I mean, we understand local government elections are coming up, and we understand that this is an ideal platform to begin to canvass for votes for local government elections. You see how upset they get there when you start speaking the truth to them, you see? So you should remember that when voting time comes. This is the side that is on your side, not that side. Remember that. So, in Honorable Mania, who's a fine gentleman, he's really a fine gentleman. But as one of the members pointed out, theatrics is a very important part of his presentation. And so he's got to keep you awake, he's got to keep us awake. But in every minute that he spent in this platform, there was no empathy for workers and what they want in this thing. So remember that when the voting time comes, honorable members. Honorable Kawula makes an important point. But remember that access to hard-earned money is something...
Honorable Minister, please take your seat. What are you raising on, Honorable Member?
Is the Minister prepared to take a question?
We'll come back to you, Honorable Mania. So, Honorable Kawula, we don't want the resignation of workers. Let us collectively send a message out. There is no need to resign. Preserve the money that you have. We will find a solution that satisfies as many people as possible, and we don't want people to take actions today that they will regret in a month or two later. And we should all agree across the board. I don't have time to respond to Honorable Mania, but when the Deputy Minister is ready to answer his questions, he will do so.
Honorable members, the motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah. Where is it? Okay. Okay. I now... Sorry?
You were following the list.
Yeah, all right. Wait.
We have ended.
Are there any objections to the bill being read a first time? There being an objection, let's put the question. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those against, no. I think the ayes have it.
Deputy Speaker, please note the objection of the DA. Thank you.
We will. Okay. We will note the objections of the DA, and the Secretary will read the bill a first time.
Revenue Laws Amendment Bill.
The Secretary will read the third order of the day.
Second reading debate, Revenue Laws Amendment Bill.
As there is no list of speakers, are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? There's an objection. I now put the question. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against, no. I think the ayes have it.
Deputy Speaker, please note the objection of the DA. Thank you.
We will. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Revenue Laws Amendment Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the fourth order of the day.
Consideration of recommendation of candidates to fill vacancies on Council of Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA.
The question before the House is that the following list of candidates be submitted to the Minister for consideration in order to fill vacancies in the Independent Communication Authority of South Africa Council. Mr. Paris Mashile, Mr. Kiabetsi Mudimweng, Ms. Butlanyana Mukhele, and Peter Zimiri. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed.
Deputy Speaker,
Yes.
the DA would like to make declaration, please.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, declarations having been called for. Please proceed, Honourable Member.
Thanks, Honourable Chairperson. The DA is
Deputy
pleased
Speaker.
that the two candidates who were opposed to have been removed from the list of candidates to fill vacancies on the ICASA Council. Firstly, Mr. Mluko Mtide, who were opposed to on the counts of his support of a media appeals tribunal. We hope that the minister's decision not to include Mr. Mtide means that she too is opposed to the introduction of a media appeals tribunal, and we will not see the introduction of legislation in this regard as contained in the ANC's NGC documents. We also are pleased that Mr. Tamin Tenteni's name was withdrawn after the DA revealed that he has a criminal record. It is, however, disappointing that almost a year after the DA revealed his criminal record, he continues to serve on the MDDA board. We trust that his removal from the MDDA board and the filling of the outstanding vacancies on ICASA will be made priority. The DA supports this report.
Yes, Honourable Member.
I am here on behalf of Commissar Mbuiseni, who is very, very busy with elections work. As EFF, we call for ICASA's independence and that it must be elevated to the same status as Section 9 institution. Also, we are not here to rubber stamp decisions of Lutuli House. ICASA must raise its game in regulating companies like Vodacom in terms of cost of data, as well as multi-choice, which must open up space in pay TV market for black entrants. NASPAS must know it was built by apartheid money and it owes the people of this country to demonopolize itself and not own everything in media, including newspapers and radios. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Singh.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Let me first say that I was not part of the committee deliberations, but as we support the names that have been proposed, but note that there is a gender imbalance, and we thought the committee could have done rather better in having more females instead of 1 out of 4 females. But having said that, Honourable Deputy Speaker, one notes that ICASA is an independent communications authority, and its mandate is to regulate both the telecommunications and the broadcasting sectors in the public interest. Now, we do not see much of this happening in terms of independence and fairness, because we find that when it comes to our public broadcaster, the SABC, more often than not, the ruling party gets more airtime than any other party, and most of the other parties are excluded. So we hope that ICASA and these councillors who are going to be appointed after the resolution today take their job seriously in ensuring the independence of our broadcasting sector as we move forward. There's another interesting program that comes to mind, Honourable Deputy Speaker, that I watch now and again, and that's a program called 90 Plain Street. And I think this program needs to be looked at in terms of its bias, because it's not offering education to the public about voting, but it's offering ANC education to the public. And I think this program needs to be looked at moving forward. But we will support the names that have been proposed by the committee. Thank you.
Honorable Imam.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. According to the ICASA Act, those appointed to the Regulators Council must be individuals who are committed to fairness, freedom of expression, openness, and accountability on the part of those entrusted with the governance of public service, are representatives of a broad cross-section of the population of South Africa, and possess suitable qualifications, expertise, and experience in the fields of, among others, broadcasting, electronic communications, and postal policy or operations, public policy development, electronic engineering, law, IT content in any form, consumer protection, education, economics, finance, or any other relevant expertise or qualification. The list of names presented to the Portfolio Committee report tabled here today represents a fair representation of the guidelines set out in the Act. Mr. Paris Mashile is an industry veteran who spent 5 years as ICASA chairperson between 2005 and 2010 and has a good academic track record. Mr. Kibetswe Modimung worked as a business and labor journalist at the Sunday Times before working in communications for a number of big corporates. He currently sits on the board of the South African Weather Service and was previously shortlisted for his position on the South African Broadcasting Corporation board. Ms. Botlenyana Mokele is a consultant at Pigama Consulting and was previously a researcher at ICASA. She spent a 5-year tenure at the Department of Communications from 2007 to 2012. Finally, Mr. Peter Zimri is also an industry veteran, currently a frequency spectrum specialist, who was senior manager for spectrum at the ICASA between 2002 and 2004. Following his 2-year tenure at ICASA, Mr. Zimri served as a director at the then Department of Communications for 3 years. All 4 of the candidates listed have a valuable contribution to make, and the National Freedom Party is satisfied that they meet the requirements for appointment to the Regulators Council, and accordingly, we support the recommendations of the Portfolio Committee tabled here today.
Thank you. Go ahead, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The ANC supports the report. Indeed, this is a true reflection of the deliberations at the Portfolio Committee on Communications that resulted in the unanimous adoption of the report by all the parties present in the meeting. ICASA is one of the entities that is performing extremely well, and as the ANC, we are confident that the appointment of the 4 recommended candidates will go a long way in taking it to a higher level, as they possess skills relevant to the ICT regulatory environment. We are pleased by the fact that all the concerns that have been raised when the report was first referred back to the Portfolio Committee have been satisfactorily addressed. As for the red overalls, I could not pick up anything that warrants any response. Moreover, they were not even part of the meeting that discussed and finally adopted the report. Science retikeza muvhigo wa komiti ya zwa vhudavhidzano and ri khou tenda uri u ḓo isa phanḓa uri ICASA ise phanḓa na mushumo wayo wavhuḓi. Ndi khou livhuwa.
Thank you. Honourable members, I put the motion again. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
Please note the objection of the EFF.
Oh, okay. We'll note the objection of the EFF. The bill will be sent to the National Council of... no, sorry? The names here. The list of candidates will be forwarded to the Minister of Communication for consideration. The Secretary will read the 5th and 6th orders.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training on oversight visit to Northern Cape Province, and consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training on oversight visit to Mpumalanga in Gauteng.
I now recognize the Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Just run fast. Wait, take your seat, Honourable Member. Take your seat there.
Thanks, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I move that the reports be adopted.
The motion is that reports be adopted. Are there any objections? There are no objections.
Deputy Speaker.
Agreed to. Yes, Honourable Member.
The DA would like to make a declaration, please.
Okay. The DA wants to make a declaration. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. These two reports cover, amongst other things, visits made by our Portfolio Committee to the much vaunted two new universities, Sol Plaatje University in Kimberley and the University of Mpumalanga, both opened during 2015. Our participation rate in university education remains, by international standards, very low, in spite of the rapid expansion of student numbers over the past 20 years. So the two new universities are very welcome additions to the educational landscape. And the department has acted wisely in not allowing these two new universities to grow too rapidly, wisdom which it lacked when it virtually forced the rest of the university sector to grow far too fast with too little funding, to the detriment of quality, student contentment, and the reputation of our system. These new universities remain very small. Rapid growth is not the problem. But in time, will they evolve into proper universities, or will they remain more like local community colleges? Sol Plaatje University has impressive ambitions to become a full university over time, with all the sophistication that requires. The University of Mpumalanga appears to be less set on this path. Both will, at the current meagre levels of university funding, struggle. We need to see evidence from the Minister of serious developmental funding and visionary imagination, not qualities that have been forthcoming in recent times. If these two fledgling institutions are to become serious players
for job creation, so that South Africans can provide for their food,
acknowledge that these and perhaps several other institutions in our 26-strong university sector may never be able to reach full university capacity given current funding levels. They will languish in the nether regions of being neither one thing nor the other, financially insecure and academically undistinguished. Thank you.
Honourable Mota.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, firstly, we would like to note the following. In 2014, we came here and we expressed our opinion that the Sol Plaatje University, together with the Mpumalanga University, were not ready to be called the universities. And in our visits, this was confirmed. The two are supposed to be gradually led to become to be universities through a process that accommodates them in the university system, may be named differently, called the university colleges, be attached either to a primary university or be modestly led towards that process that will eventually give them the status of a university. Today, the young people in these universities still call themselves the students of a university, but with a special character. A lot of services that exist in normal TVET colleges do not exist in these two universities. Thirdly, these are an assemblance, in particular the University of Mpumalanga, is an assemblance of old teacher and agricultural college. So care was supposed to be taken in the consolidation and the structuring of what is called a perceived university. On the other leg of the visit, which is the visit to the University of Tshwane University of Technology, the fires at this university are still burning. When we responded to the visit, we were attempting to diffuse the fires with a view of understanding the intricate problems that visit the university. Today, this university remains closed. Today, the problems of 2014, 2015 remain unresolved. who is leading that university, corrupt, unprofessional ANC cadres who probably knows nothing about managing a university. Thank you.
Honorable Commission.
Deputy Speaker, honorable members, a continuous thread running through the observation and recommendation of the portfolio committees, the need for increased funds both for the institutions as well as for the students. The NFP wants to say that establishing a new university is not easy and requires an extraordinary amount of planning and money in it if it is to be done properly. An under-resourced university defeats the objective of providing quality education and is likely to lead to dissatisfaction among students who have high expectations. The National Freedom Party welcomes the depth and findings of the oversight visit to the newly established University of Mpumalanga, but we want to say that funding alone is not the alpha and omega of solving all the problems at our universities. No amount of money will make a success of a university or college if there is no effective and efficient leadership. In this regard, the National Freedom Party shares the concern that regarding the absence of stable leadership and governance at the Tswana University of Technology, and this is causing problems for that university. This particular university has consistently been a hotbed of deep dissatisfaction among its students, and we believe that a stable leadership would go a long way to restore a sense of dignity and ownership of the institution among the students. The TVET colleges in South Africa are seriously underfunded and underrated. These colleges face similar challenges as those faced by universities, and they are not vigorously promoted as first-choice institutions for school leavers as they should be. South Africa has a massive need for skills training which are offered at the TVET college, yet the NSFAS allocation for this sector is seriously neglected. The National Freedom Party believes that, of course, we need some emphasis on degrees, but more emphasis should be directed at encouraging school leavers to go and give serious consideration for TVET colleges. When it comes to Sol Plaatje University, the NFP wants to say it is important that from its inception, a newly established university should be well managed. Such a solid foundation will go a long way to ensure that the university becomes a model example of the new generation of university, which can now build. Universities who have a clean slate and which can be developed to reflect the diversity of our nation in its spatial and social layout and its curriculum content. The National Freedom Party is also in support and recommendations that the department should explore the possibility of engaging the National Treasury for additional funding to expand the TVET college's infrastructure. In fact, we believe that all TVET colleges in South Africa should be better funded so as to make these centers dispersed centers of further education that provide quality and affordable centers of learning. We would like to see a particular emphasis placed on developing TVET colleges which serve the rural communities, rural areas, and we support the recommendation of the portfolio committee. Thank you very much.
Honorable Kekana.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, the report is on the two universities. But to start from the start, when we do oversight on universities, I just want to remind members that these are the following things that we look at. We look at governance and administration, 1. 2, we look at transformation. 3, we look at student registration. 4, we look at financial viability. 5, we look at NSFAS administration and other matters. Or now recently we look at student protest. Now, for the new university, 2 universities, remember that what the NC government was trying to achieve there was to address the legacy of the past, geographic and racial legacy of the past. The fact that the 2 provinces did not have universities, that is, the province of Northern Cape and the province of Mpumalanga, there was no university built in the past. That is the one legacy that we are addressing. The second legacy was that, and this is about what Ms. Honorable Mpata has been saying about the protests that we are experiencing at universities. The new legacy that is being established is that though there are genuine student issues that the NCS acknowledged as a government and a ministry, we still find that there are parties that would like to fuel fire because they enjoy this fire that is burning at universities. So when we go out and stabilize and address genuine issues that students are raising, there are these people behind who are poking the fire, because the more there is fire there, is the more they think they can gain more votes because they don't have a better program to offer. Now, with the growth of the university, I must mention that the resources have been allocated. The University of Mpumalanga received a startup allocation of 376 million, contrary to the impression created by opposition that there hasn't been enough resources allocated. The other issue that I want to address, which I think is important, is that remember that in the Northern Cape, we won the bid of SLK, biggest
Honorable
television in the world.
Your time has expired.
And that is going to commensurate with the...
Your time has expired, Honorable Member. Honorable members, the motion is that the reports be adopted. Are there any objections?
Please note the objection of the EFF.
We'll note the objections of the EFF. The report are agreed to. The Secretary will read the 7th to the 9th orders.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training on Annual Report 2013-14 of Safety and Security Sector Education and Training Authority and Public Service Education and Training Authority. Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training on Strategic Plan 2015-16 to 2019-2020 and Annual Performance Plan 2015 to 2016 of Mining Qualifications Authority and Transport Education and Training Authority. Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training on Strategic Plan 2015-16 to 2019-2020 and Annual Performance Plan 2015-16 of Culture, Arts, Tourism, Hospitality and Sport Sector Education and Training Authority and Safety and Security Sector Education and Training Authority.
I now recognize the Honorable Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the reports be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections.
Deputy Speaker, the DA would like to make a declaration, please. Thank you.
Okay. DA wants to make a declaration. Go ahead, ma'am.
We've put 3 reports together here, which helps. Most people acknowledge that the Setas are not working well. These reports cover meetings of our portfolio committee with several of the 21 Setas and provide us with insight into the ongoing saga that they entail. Since the Department of Higher Education and Training took over management of the Setas from the Department of Labour, there have been some improvements. Minister Nzimande has taken a firmer line on those that are clearly corrupt and has, following the model used for dysfunctional universities, put them under administration. But the multi-billion rand Seta industry has proved resistant in many respects. There is just too much money available through cronyist tenders and fly-by-night educational scams for this to go away that easily. Some believe that the government and even certain individual political parties, which I will not mention, and allies of political parties are benefiting from some of these scams. This is at the expense of thousands of young people who are offered learnerships and apprenticeships and other qualifications through the Setas, but who never actually obtain them. So the big question is, what is to be done with the Setas? The Minister has his own ideas about this. In keeping with his tendency towards centralization, he wishes to bring them all under his direct control and disempower their independent boards entirely, strip the Setas of their original links to industry, which funds them, and labour, which is meant to benefit from them, and turn them into another government department. This is not a solution. We acknowledge that something needs to be done about the Setas, but unless industry can be kept fully on board as the hosts of the apprenticeships and learnerships the Setas support, and government departments do not have a good record in that respect, the Setas will not be able to train properly employable people, and I'd like to warn that there is trouble ahead in this sector. Thank you.
Honourable Mbata.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. To start with the security services and so on, Seta. In our view, this is the most, let me give you the full word. It is the security sector, education and training. Are you happy now? This is the most corrupt institution that we have ever identified. First and foremost, the chairman of this Seta has a wife working as an executive. She keeps on getting promotions. All others are investigated, suspended for wrongdoing, side by side with their colleagues. She keeps on skipping and surviving. And until today, the recommendations on how the Seta could be taken out of administration are still not clear. In fact, the idea of this Seta going out of administration seems to be a pipe dream. The security industry needs skills, and it has got the lowest skill base in our country. And currently in the services sector, it is currently the most growing and able to offer our people jobs. Whether they are sustainable jobs or the other is neither here nor there. What we need is a functioning Seta, able to attribute all its resources and its endeavors to those in need, not to the cronies of the politicians. In fact, if we were to talk the truth, this is one of the Setas that did a boo-boo. It invested wrongly, and there was a huge criminal case that went nationwide on its investment. So you could see they have no shame, either in providing skills or in other things such as investment. The public service sector, it has the lowest resources available. It is not able to provide for its mandate. It is not able to provide us with a trained cadership of public servants. It is ill-financed and, most importantly, not capable to even handle any of the public service training requirements. Then we go to Seta. This one has a mystery in its existence. It goes in and out of administration. And again, there are no signs of it getting out of administration. In its last report into the committee, it signals as an institution that has been captured by criminals. It is one example of a captured institution where the cronies on the inside eat with the others on the outside. Thank you.
Honorable Kubisa.
Deputy Speaker, may I address you, please?
On what, Honorable Member?
Deputy Speaker, I've got a serious concern where the members of the House are debating very fundamental, important issues. Neither the Minister of Higher Education nor his deputy are here. And I think it must be on record and noted, because how are they going to shape their thinking towards the concerns that members of this House are raising when they are not in the House?
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Member. Let's hear it. Proceed, Honorable Member. Proceed.
Okay.
Honorable Speaker, on a point of order.
What's the point of order, Honorable Member?
Honorable Speaker, Deputy Speaker, this member is talking about ministers who are not here. These are reports that have been ATC'd. The ministers have all the information. So they have prior meeting engagements. So we don't have to answer to you about that.
Honorable members, let's proceed. I think it's a...
Deputy Speaker.
Go ahead, honorable member.
Honorable members, the National Freedom Party is on record complaining about the service of these sitters, that they've given billions of rands but not performing accordingly. And where there is a turnaround, we'll be able to say there is a turnaround. The National Freedom Party takes note of the improvements in the management of the CAT sitter since an administrator had been appointed, and we share the concern of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training about the challenges which this sitter will be facing in the year to come. And these are some of the challenges. Other challenges, however, are well within the competence of the CAT sitter to deal with if the entity is managed in accordance with the regulations and prescribed management and internal control processes. With qualified and experienced board members and senior management, the CAT sitter can effectively deal with the challenges of poorly managed business contract, lack of provincial footprints, inability to match service delivery and financial challenges, and delivering consistent compliance with governance imperatives and develop relationships with nature conservation service providers. The state of the SAS sitter, unlike that of the CAT sitter, is not very encouraging. The National Freedom Party supports the recommendation of the Portfolio Committee pertaining to the CAT sitter contained in this report. When I move, Deputy Speaker, to the other sitters, the National Freedom Party shares the concern of the Portfolio Committee on the higher education with the underachievement of by both sitters in the period under review. And sectoral education and training authorities have a very important role to play in further education and skills development. And a lack of performance will result in our young people getting inferior and inadequate training, which will not equip them for success in the real world. The National Freedom Party also, Honorable Deputy Speaker, is particularly encouraged by the Portfolio Committee report that the TITA sitter should have a training program with a particular focus for taxi and truck drivers to improve their road safety skills. It is a known fact that South Africa has a very high number of road fatalities compared to that of the world, and minibus taxi accidents contribute accordingly to the carnage on our roads. The vast majority of South Africans have to rely on minibuses in the absence of reliable and affordable public transport. And until such time as the government gets its act together to provide a safe and affordable alternative public transport to minibus, there will always be a desperate need for training program with particular focus on test drivers. The National Freedom Party also welcomes the Portfolio Committee recommendation on both the MQA and the TITA sitter for their interventions to assist the learners in rural areas to improve their performance in maths and science and other subjects. But would wish that these sitters move even more to help the people who are not learned to get more skills.
Your time
Thank
is
you,
expired.
Deputy Speaker. Support the report.
Honorable member, it's your turn, sir.
The Honorable Deputy Speaker, to argue that these sitters are dysfunctional would be an understatement of a decade. No wonder the minister resolved to put two of them, namely the CAT sitter and the SAS sitter, under administration. Visions and goals of the National Development Plan diminish daily because of the continuous failure of these key national sitters, which are the core of the skills development of South Africa. These sitters are supposed to create job opportunities for unemployed youth and contribute to the country's economy, reduce the scourge of poverty, and promote justice and social cohesion. But instead, these public funds are wasted on irregular spending,
poor performance, non-adherence to the provisions of the Skills Development Act of 1998. Furthermore, even the board members who should be part of the solution are, to a large measure, part of the problem. For instance, after the board of Seta had commissioned Grant Thornton to conduct a forensic investigation into the allegations of maladministration and mismanagement, that very board could not act on the findings because some of the board members were implicated. Even its annual performance plan for 2015-2016 is completely unacceptable because of its failure to meet the National Treasury's SMART principles. These sitters are marked with corruption that hinders the development of the country's economy, and we urge the ministry to consider possibilities of reviewing Skills Development Act to ensure proper functionality of these sitters going forward. Perhaps a better option would be to dissolve them altogether. I thank you.
Honourable Member, it's your turn. Thank you.
Honourable Deputy Speaker and honourable members, the ANC supports the adoption of these reports. The committee met with the sitters to assess their financial and non-financial performance and also to check whether the policies pronounced by the government were implemented accordingly. These entities are mandated by the Skills Development Act to fund the skills development initiatives that are meant to produce the scarce and critical skills needed for the inclusive economic growth. The committee identified serious challenges within some of the sitters and expressed to the minister the seriousness of some of these issues. Honourable Chairperson, Deputy Speaker, the minister moved with speed and exercised his authority as advised by the National Skills Authority and mandated by the Skills Development Act and placed the following sitters under administration. That was SASITA and CAT Seta. As such, contracts awarded through non-compliance with legislation were terminated. In all sitters, processes of putting systems and internal controls are underway. The committee welcomed the commitment by MQA and TITA to fund bursaries at universities and colleges. A concern was raised by the committee that only 8 out of 50 TVET colleges offer transport-related NCV programs, and this should be addressed by the colleges. The PSETA supported rural youth skills development partnerships, facilitated public service workplace for TVET lecturers, and also partnered with ETDP Seta to have presence in the 50 TVET colleges. As the committee, we have made recommendations and will continue to monitor the implementation thereof. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now put the question. Those in favour will... Sorry? Yeah, okay. No, this is done. The motion is that the reports be adopted. I now put the question. Those in favour will say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it.
Deputy Speaker, please note the objection of the EFF.
We will. Okay. Agreed to with noting that objection. The Secretary will read the 10th order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Sport and Recreation on Commission for Gender Equality, public hearing report on gender transformation in South African football.
The Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thanks, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections.
Deputy Speaker, the DA would like to make a declaration, please. Thank you.
Okay, the DA wants to declare. Come, Honorable Member, declare. Declare, yes.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Deputy Speaker. The actual report by the Commission of Gender Equality on gender transformation in South African football makes for a very sad reading. This process started in 2010 by the Commission of Gender Equality to evaluate levels of gender transformation in South African football. And the Commission had a lengthy struggle with the South African Football Federation in trying to get them to supply relevant information to help with the study, but further to respond to pertinent questions regarding its efforts to ensure that there's gender equality in South African football. And one of the glaring examples of this is typified by a line from that report which reads that it was apparent from SAFA's responses that unequal effort, commitment, and resources are applied to women's football. But Chair, the most painful part of this is that regardless of the efforts of a Chapter 9 institution to constructively engage SAFA on this, they dilly-dallied throughout the entire process. In fact, up until they were threatened with a subpoena, that they submitted the relevant information that was in there. And in the committee, we had a very robust discussion on the report because this is an issue that has dominated our attention. But it was very clear from some of us who have been following developments in football that women's football in South Africa continues to be underfunded, women's players are underrepresented, and they are underpaid. And nothing illustrates this than the match fees that female national team players get, which is up to a maximum of 5,000 rands for a win in comparison to what Bafana get, which is up to 60,000 rands for a win if they do win games and 30,000 for a draw. And Chair, Deputy Speaker, in 2016, it should never be acceptable that any professional athlete, least to say a national team player, should be taking 5,000 rands for representing the national team. More so when we know that in that particular sporting code, there is no professional league. Despite Minister Mbalula's commitments that he will fast-track this process. And I think this is an opportunity that those who lead sports in the country should take it into call that we must decisively put the structures in place that will make sure that there is a professional women's league in place, but more so to use instruments of government to allocate those resources towards ensuring that the sport remains attractive to young women who aspire to represent the country. Because in this day and age, pursuing sports in itself can be a career. Nonetheless, we support the report. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I'm here on behalf of Honorable Mteka, who is busy with election work. I'm here on behalf of Honorable Mteka, who is busy with election work. Because the Minister of COGTA, who is the weekend special minister, does not want to declare the date of elections. So EFF does not want to be taken by surprise. The Economic Freedom Fighters welcomes the initiative by the Commission for Gender Equality, which seeks to focus our attention on a painful yet neglected matter in our football, that of ignoring women in football. Last year, we saw an end of what by all means was a glorious career, that of Portia Modise, who was the first African soccer player ever to score more than 100 goals in an international career. Sadly, in all these years, Modise spent as a loyal servant to South African soccer. She retired with very little to show. The record she holds is not just for women's soccer, but for soccer in general. But she was treated with a very little care and appreciation by the South African Football Association. Her story is a serious indictment against SAFA on its treatment of women in sports. Women footballers, Modise claimed, are just given stipend for the matches they play, and there was no mechanism for ensuring that they were well taken care of. As the report correctly states, it is not just SAFA, but corporate sponsors are also responsible for the neglect of women football. We call on SAFA and all those responsible for sport development to take this matter seriously and treat women in soccer the same way they treat soccer in general. We call on Minister Mbalula to stop thinking like a celebrity. He is tweeting 24-hour service. He is even tweeting wrong things that were not supposed to be tweeted. So he must start thinking like a minister and sort out all those challenges in football. But we will welcome this report anyway.
Honourable member.
Point of order.
What's the point of order, Honourable Minister?
This malice that she's spreading here, she can debate the issues and attack, but she must never come here and claim that what we tweet here, it is something that we need, because it is never authenticated.
All right, Honourable
and
Minister.
And where is my right to defend myself when I'm being looted here?
Honourable member, okay. That's a political statement. Go ahead, Honourable member.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, our government is still falling hopelessly short in respect of implementation of principles of United Nations Convention to end discrimination against women, especially in women's football. Progress is still painful, slow in what is widely accepted as men-only sport in South Africa. This is evidenced by making 8% of SAFA budget allocation going to women's football, which shows that the sport is still undervalued and discriminated against. This is difficult to understand because Banyana win more games than Bafana. Why also are those few women in senior management and coaching role as SAFA? In an organization like SAFA, surely there must be compliance with the Employment Equity Act. Why is not allowed to continue? Honourable Deputy Speaker, gender imbalance in sport is a problem that must be tackled by both public and private sectors. It appears that both sectors remain resistant to transformative change. It also speaks to larger issues around equity and patriotic in our society that is so relevant even today. 20 years in our constitutional democracy. Transformation in terms of race always trumps transformation in terms of gender. We therefore call for more women to be appointed to senior leadership and coaching positions within SAFA, as well as greater equal budget allocations to be made available to women's football. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Filtani.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Sport started off as an activity that was designed to create entertainment, most fulfilling for the people who participate and equally compensating to the social needs of the people who watch sport. With time, that moved on to, as we moved on to professional sports, it became a source of income. Paying less attention to women as compared to the attention that is being given to men is a form of discrimination. It has to stop. It must stop. It is just unacceptable that there's less attention being given to women than is given to men, especially at this time of our development as a constitutional democracy. Briefly, I would say, were we having a minister of sport who is less celebratory and more functional, this could be given appropriate attention. But as things are, the situation is unfortunately totally hopeless. I pity women who are trying to be serious in sport in South Africa for as long as we have got that minister occupying the seat. It's as simple as all that. ANC people may not like what I'm saying, but the world, the whole country can see that he is less serious about development of sport. It's as simple as all that. The report is okay.
Honourable Shalembe.
Deputy Speaker,
The Portfolio Committee report tabled here today has gender transformation in South African football as its focus. The findings may well be applicable to the wider social discourse on gender equality in sports and gender equality in South African society in general. In light of this context, the National Freedom Party welcomes the recommendations of the Portfolio Committee contained in this report. It will take a long time to achieve this gender parity in South African sport, and it is unfortunate that state-supported sports federations such as SAFA should neglect to spearhead transformation towards gender parity and equality in South African sport. The blame for the slow gender transformation in South Africa can, however, not only be laid at the feet of sports officials. Ultimately, responsibility for the slow pace in gender transformation must and should be brought to the door of National Department of Sport and Recreation, and in particular to the door of its political boss, the minister. The National Freedom Party finds it a national embarrassment that 22 years after we have attained our hard-won democracy, we still have to have debates on the slow pace of gender transformation in our society. There is no justification for this laxity within the Ministry of Sports and Recreation to ensure that gender transformation receives top priority, and we believe that the minister has a lot to answer for it. It is within competence of his office to ensure compliance with national objectives, but seemingly the willpower is lacking. Federation officials also have to show commitment to gender transformation in South Africa. They are tasked with the responsibility to administering and directing our different sporting codes, and if they are to be found neglecting their duty, they should be held accountable. It is fine for the Portfolio Committee to make recommendations, but there is no mechanism available to affect compliance. The responsibility to ensure that a comprehensive and effective gender transformation program is followed throughout the different sporting codes in South Africa rests with the minister, and although he has the power to execute his mandate, the National Freedom Party does not believe that he has the political willpower to do so. In conclusion, despite our misgivings about the political capacity of the Minister of Sports and Recreation to give effect to the recommendations, the National Freedom Party supports the report of the Sports Portfolio Committee tabled here today. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Sekela somlomo lo hloniphekile malunga la hloniphekile so kukhona laba labathi banesiqiniseko sokuthi bayaphila nangabe bayaphila ngiliphi igalelo lebadlalako la kule country yethu so simo setemidlalo eningizimu Afrika sithole libito lolinyenti lwenguquko lenkulumo iletha kushayisana etindzaweni letinyenti emphakathini yethu siyakunaka ukuthi live lethu lisuka kumlando ngokwehlukana lokushiya abantu labanyenti banganatakhiwo ngqandi kutemidlalo nekufinyelela emathubeni etemidlalo nekukhibika luhambo lwangemuva kwa 1994 lusinikete lithuba lekuntshintsha nelokwakha takhiwo letinsha lusiko lolusha neligalelo lolutawugcugcutela umoya webuntfu kunakiwe ukuthi akuzange kube lula futhi angeke kube kwaba lula kuhlanganisa abantu bemasiko lahlukene nemvelaphi lengafani ngoba inqubo yelubandlulilo yakha tindvonga temcondo lo ngekuhlukanisa ngelubala ngibo bona lapha enhlitiyweni yetenguquko akusiko kwekuhlukana ngebuhlanga nekuphakela ngetinsita ngokungalingani kodwa tindo letinyenti letitakelene uma tinganakwa angeke tisinike lithuba lekuyilwa yekulwa ngetinkundla temidlalo kuhlola kwenguquko kufaka tindo letimcoka letifana nebulili kufinyelela nesakhiwo ngqandi tekufaka sandla emathubeni tinqubo tekuphatha ngokulingana emsebentini nekuhola ngekwehlukana inqubo yokuthenga nekubuka bunjalo bempilo yebaqeqeshi nabonompempe kulemidlalo lekwalingwa ngayo Letinvo leti betibalulekile ngoba uma sikhuluma loludzaba lekuntshintsha ngetebulile kutemidlalo ngoba kubonwe yi-CGE futhi siyavumelana nayo siyi-ANC. Sikholwa ukuthi lokhu kuyingxenye yinye yako konke lokumele kubukwe. So the CGE report, which was completed in June 2012, had been preceded by the National Sports and Recreation Indaba, which was held in November 2011, which had resolved that there had to be radical approach towards ensuring that there is a total transformation to all sporting codes, which concrete actions. As a result, at the adoption of the National Sports and Recreation Plan in May 2012, the eminent person group, which was also appointed to guide transformation of all sports in our country. The EPG then conducted a pilot study of all 5 top federations in our country, which include SAFA, SARU, Netball South Africa, Athletics South Africa, and Cricket South Africa, with a view to determine their transformation status. This was the first study in 20 years that has been empirically tested and quantified to better understand progress made, as well outlining the gender imbalance.
I'm afraid your time has expired. Honourable members, I now put the question again. Those in favor will say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Honourable members, the report is agreed to. The Secretary will read the 11th and 12th orders.
Deputy Speaker,
Yes, Honourable Member.
please note the objection of the EFF.
Okay. The EFF's objection will be noted.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises on oversight visit to Port of Saldanha Bay. Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises on oversight visit to Transnet Port of Durban.
Deputy Chief Whip or her representative?
On behalf of the acting Chief Whip, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the reports be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections?
Deputy Speaker, the DA would like to make a declaration.
DA wants to make a declaration. Go ahead, Honourable Member.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The oversight visits took place to Saldanha as well as to Durban Harbour. Chair, I must at the onset say that it's always pleasing when we go to these particular areas, as they are well-organised oversight visits. However, perhaps one thing that is slightly disturbing is that we keep visiting the same places over and over again, and in actual fact, the Department of Public Enterprises really need to be taking us to power stations such as Medupi and Kusile on a more regular basis, because quite frankly, I think people at Durban Harbour are getting a bit sick of seeing us all the time. However, Chairperson, what I can say is at Saldanha, we were pleasantly surprised with the work that was being done there. What did help was that it is the constituency of my then colleague who was on the portfolio committee with me, and he had great insight into what was going on at Saldanha. One of the problems was the extension to work being done there. We were expecting the work to be completed in a 5-year period, and we're now looking at a 7.5-year period. Of course, this is problematic for economic growth in our country as well as creation of jobs. So we'd like to see an increase in productivity happening at Saldanha. Chair, when it comes to Durban Harbour, of course, things that our committee looks at are waiting periods for the onloading and offloading of ships and the cargo, and the access routes in and out of the harbour. Chairperson, this said, even though the committee was, and we agree with the report found by the committee, I think it is imperative that we as the Department of, the Committee of Public Enterprises, keep a very close eye on the harbours and make sure that our harbours are 100% ready to accept, offload and transport the nearly 7 million tonnes of food that is about to be brought into our country due to the drought crisis. Thank you.
Honourable Khawla.
The EFF views that the ANC has reduced the work of Parliament into either a self-praising exercise or a backroom office to rubber stamp legislation that is not consistent with the Constitution or not in the interest of workers. And it is through many of these reports that the ANC uses its majority to adopt these reports in the House and will continue to reject the adoption of these reports. While the report notes that there has never been strikes in the last 4 years because of the working relationships with unions, clearly only boardroom meeting could lead to such a conclusion, out of touch with reality. On the ground, workers' daily struggle is completely different. Most workers employed at transit ports are employed through labor brokers and subcontracted companies such as Capacity Greystone, DP World, Ulwandle, and Airtwe who continue to exploit workers. Workers are forced to work for 12 to 16 hours a day. Workers are paid between 16 Rand and 18 Rand per hour. Workers employed through these subcontracted companies are paid the maximum of 4,000 per month, while translate employees are paid 10,000 but doing the same job. Workers continue to work without legally binding employment contracts. Workers are not registered with Department of Labor for UIF. Workers are not provided with protective clothing. Workers are not protected from intimidation by labor brokers and subcontracted companies. Hence, there are no strikes. The report does not even make mention of these, just to show how out of touch with reality these reports are, only intended to be self-praising exercise. On the 30th of July, the EFF wrote to the Minister of Public Enterprise and the Executive of Transnet to bring these matters to their attention. Again, a follow-up letter was sent and workers are yet to see any change, let alone a reply from the Minister or Transnet. The EFF rejects the adoption of this committee report.
Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, international trade volumes are increasing rapidly, not only within the region, but also continentally. We are seeing estimates of trade increasing by over 700% between now and 2050, with an estimated 200% increase in freight volumes over the same period. Over 90% of international trade is moved via carriage by sea, and it is therefore of the utmost importance that our ports are infrastructurally sound to act with the least impediment to the movement of goods to and from South Africa. One can say that this is the case, Honorable Deputy Speaker, with regard to Durban, because the Durban port is certainly developing in line with increased demands. However, there are particular challenges outside of the port, which Honorable Mazzoni referred to, and one such challenge is access roads into the port. Although a lot of money was spent on developing road infrastructure, there are still serious backlogs in terms of the trucks bringing containers into the Durban port. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed holistically. But we must say that Durban is handling 65% of the country's trade volume when it comes to export of cars, import and export of cars, and we need to maintain this competitive edge moving forward. We also found that as a committee, there needs to be a lot more done in terms of skills development and developing people in the rural areas. The outreach and training programs need to be accelerated. With regard to Saldanha, it certainly has a competitive edge with regard to liquid petroleum gas, and this is something that we need to prioritize and exploit as we are moving forward. We would not like to see other ports along the coast taking away this business, which surely Saldanha can deal with. And the infrastructure development at Saldanha is positive, to say the least, in being able to handle liquid petroleum gas. Coming to Durban and the consultation with committees, we are aware, Honorable Deputy Speaker, that the construction of the dugout port at the old airport terminal has been delayed for some time. And I think this is largely because the Salisbury Naval Base have made available 2 berths which are going to be developed. But we would insist, Honorable Deputy Speaker, that moving forward, all relevant departments need to get seriously involved, particularly the Department of Environmental Affairs, Honorable Deputy Minister, because communities in that area still have serious problems with regard to the dugout port. And any approval for development must come with buy-in from communities. And I'm sure we, like you, support sustainable development. There are still going to be some concerns, but by and large, it must whatever development must benefit the economy and the people if we are to move forward. Thank you very much. We support the reports. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Member.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Durban Container Terminal, situated in the Port of Durban, is the biggest and busiest in the Southern Hemisphere and currently handles 64% of the country's seaborne container traffic. The ambitious 110 billion port upgrade and expansion project currently underway will significantly increase the capacity of the various terminals in the port. And Transnet has proposed a phased development of a new dig-out port on the old Durban International Airport site, among other projects. This development indicates that the Port of Durban has been positioned for short, medium, and long-term economic growth and expansion, which is welcome. The NFP is in agreement with the recommendation, although there seems to be a bias in favor of socio-economic consideration. The NFP would have liked to see the Portfolio Committee commenting on aspects such as the future use of the sustainable and renewable energy and a possible commitment by the Port of Durban towards developing a model for reduced energy reliance on Eskom. In addition, the NFP would have appreciated it if the Portfolio Committee had been given an opportunity to pay a visit to the Durban South Industrial Basin to assess the impact of the port activities on neighboring residential communities. Overall, the NFP is encouraged by the Portfolio Committee recommendations, and in particular that Transnet regularly engages with all stakeholders, including the government of KZN, the business community and civil society regarding the opportunities and how they could collectively participate. Given the economic importance of the Port of Durban, it is imperative that all stakeholders and role players work together to maximize the operational potential of the port, particularly so if more business owned by the youth, women, and people with disabilities could be accommodated. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, the NFP support the report of the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises tabled here today. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The African National Congress support the Portfolio Committee visits on the two oversight visits, the one on the 5th of August 2015, where we visited Transnet Ports in Durban, and also the one on the 6th of February 2015, where we visited Port of Saldanha. The purpose of this visit, Honorable Deputy Speaker, was to assess the progress made by Transnet in advancing the developmental objectives of government and nothing else. That was a purely an assessment visit. Those who don't agree with this assessment, I think they have a problem. We need to assist them. This was part of their market demand strategy, which all of us in that committee, we scrutinized and said, okay, let's go and see the implementation of this strategy. And now we went there, we came with the assessment report, which we presented last time. The Transnet has also introduced an incentive for exports. I hear honorable members were raising the issues of the ports tariffs there. They've introduced the exports and manufacturing of goods increase the tariffs so as to incentivize those who want to do the business in the ports. And this was mainly to encourage localization and beneficiation. So from the African National Congress, we support the reports. Those who reject, they were never even part of the visits. I don't know what are they rejecting. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable members, the motion is that the reports be adopted. I now put the question again. Those in favor will say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. And so the reports are agreed.
Deputy Speaker,
Yes, Honorable
please
Howard.
note our objection.
We'll note your objection, sir. Yeah. The Secretary will read the 13th order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Rural Development and Land Reform on public hearings on implementation of Recapitalization and Development Program.
Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
On behalf of the acting Chief Whip, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Deputy Speaker, the Democratic Alliance would like to make a declaration.
Okay. Declarations, go ahead. Go ahead, Honourable Member.
Honourable Chair, the Democratic Alliance will welcome any report that tries to unpack why land reform has not succeeded in South Africa. This is because the Democratic Alliance has not cynically abandoned the dream of a growing, successful, flourishing and unifying agricultural sector that provides firstly opportunities for the poor, makes freedom a reality for all, and creates a fair economic system for farmers, farm workers and farm dwellers. We would like the following remarks by the DA to be noted. Fundamental questions need to be asked regarding recapitalization funding. Why did the projects being supported fail in the first place, and are the right things being done to fix this? If these questions are not answered, the recap program will end up being a bottomless pit, destroying the opportunity of those beneficiaries concerned, as well as suck resources from other ventures equally, if not more, deserving of support. The factors that led to projects needing recap funding can be summarized as follows. Firstly, poor coordination between government departments, different levels of government and government agencies. Secondly, poor beneficiary selection. Thirdly, poor management and business models. Fourthly, the wrong support at the wrong times. And then fifthly, politicizing delivery to the extent that the appearance of delivery becomes more important than actual delivery. And lastly, poor accountability and poor governance in general. The DA welcomes the interaction around this report within the committee. We thought it was a fair interaction, but do not feel that these fundamental questions have been answered by the department to our satisfaction. We still see political pressures on projects that disrupt the emerging business models. In other words, politicians tell farmers what they should do. We still see no proper system of beneficiary selection. It's still unclear who's supposed to be the beneficiaries. We still see poor communication, poor accountability, poor governance, and also poor coordination. We still see support driven by government expenditure regulation than what the farm actually needs. We still see projects being supported without the fundamental requirements for long-term success, the actual property rights, ownership of these projects by the beneficiaries. We welcome the report, but we are not particularly impressed. Thank you.
Honourable Malauzi.
Deputy Speaker, the Recapitalization and the Development Program was launched in 2009 as a flagship program of what Minister Nkwiti Department thought would usher a new era of agrarian transformation. This program was meant to assist emerging black farmers with the basic inputs required to manage and to run successful agribusiness. But as indicated by the people who participated in the public hearings, this program has fallen far short of the intended objectives because we argue it was poorly conceptualized from the beginning. There was never, and still there is not, a clear-cut program of cooperation between the RECAP program and the provincial departments of agriculture, whose mandate it is to provide support and extension services to emerging farmers. RECAP program, good intentioned as it may be, is a duplication of functions of the Department of Agriculture. Apart dora bona zori ai Department of Agriculture ozuma wo ipande kanya na muhasho wa mavu hu itala fedzi upa bamwe bathu dzi position dzaka cabinet. The approach of the RECAP program is also too much commercial oriented. ignoring the struggle of many emerging farmers who use communal land or land allocated to them via traditional custom. The recap requires that one must have a title to the land before they can offer support. This flies in the face of the commitment to ensure that emerging farmers in the former Bantustan are supported. The recap program is also not comprehensive enough to look at the entire agrarian value chain and support emerging black agribusinesses to exploit those value chain. As such, it leaves the structure of agriculture still highly untransformed. Ndingazwo ri khou ri rine sa EFF ri tshi khou vhona zwe vho Zuma vha ṱanganyisa muhasho wa vhulimi khathihi na mavu zwo ita zwori hei report ri pfha zwori ri nga si kone u i ṱanganedza ngauri i sia vha ravhulimi vhanzhi vha re mahayani vha sa kone u wana thuso musi vho fhiwa mavu nga mahosi. Ndaa.
Honourable Member, return.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Recapitalization Development Program was a well-thought-through strategy by the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, which saw the emancipation of previously excluded communities who could now begin contributing to the economy of the country through farming. Commercial farming in South Africa enjoyed certain benefits from the former government. These benefits saw farmers being assisted by the state financing a sector and paying back very low interest on such loans. They were subsidized to further grow their business operations, for example, by subsidized prices on diesel. This led to increased yields with the extra produce being available for export to other countries. This assisted our economic growth whilst food security was maintained. What is mostly worrying currently is the lack of coordination that is happening between the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform and Provincial Department of Agriculture, as this often leads to duplication of support for a few farmers, leaving majority unassisted. The question then arises as to what criteria were used in identifying those farmers that were assisted. Often strategic partners imposed on those farmers were of no assistance in that they could not mentor them into understanding the business of farming, but treated them as just employees, and as a result, no knowledge of farming and general administration was passed on. On communal land, the same has happened, as no extension officers were available to assist subsistence farmers. The provision of tractors to subsistence farmers in communal land has also been unclear. Provinces seem to do as they wish. When National Department of Agriculture, Forest and Fisheries and the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform identified the need to reach farmers big and small, high hopes were created, but this has become very thin on the ground. The Department of Rural Development and Land Reform is itself in need of disparate reform. Its policies of assistance require greater coordination, oversight, and accountability if they are to have the desired impact. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ownership of land in South Africa is a highly politicized and emotive issue. To date, only 80 to 9% of commercial farmland, amounting to about 7 million hectares, has been redistributed or restored to black ownership. And as recently as 2.5 years ago, 37% of first-round claims had not been fully implemented. The NFP believes that if land reform had been better administered over the past 22 years, it could have served as a possible solution to rural poverty in our country. All is not lost, however. Land reform can still contribute to reducing rural poverty if the transfer of land is accompanied by both appropriate farm planning and implementation of well-designed support program to help beneficiaries become productive. Within the context of the dismal implementation of land reform program, the NFP views the recommendation of the Portfolio Committee on Rural Development and Land Reform tabled here today with a good measure of skepticism. The recommendations regarding the recapitalization and development program are somewhat vague and highly generalized. We agree that there ought to be better coordination between the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform and the Department of Agriculture, Forest and Fisheries. We also agree with the recommendation that the silo approach to planning, monitoring and evaluation must be abandoned in favor of a coordinated approach to land reform. The NFP furthermore approves of the 3-month goal set out by the Portfolio Committee for the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform, and we sincerely hope that the Minister will rise to the occasion. Finally, the NFP is in agreement with the recommendation of the Portfolio Committee that there will be joint quarterly reports from the Department of Rural Development and Land and that one of Agriculture, Forest and Fisheries on the implementation of the integrated funding model. We would, however, like to see the National Treasury also included in the joint quarterly reports. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, despite our skepticism, the NFP supports the report of the Portfolio Committee on Rural Development and Land Reform. Thank you.
Honorable President.
The UDM concurs with the report, but we want to point out a few issues. Most common problems with this program are the following: insufficient support by the department with no collaterals coming from any other source, including the beneficiaries themselves. This makes the beneficiaries to be almost totally dependent on the department, a rather too heavy burden to bear. Number 2, lack of project management skills on the part of senior management of the department is glaring. This puts the beneficiaries and therefore the department in an invidious position. Hence, the minister recently directed that from DG downwards, staff members should attend project management courses. The department is caught up in a situation where the community property associations, commonly referred to as CPAs, become a law unto themselves, thus failing to maximize the opportunities presented to them by the department. In some cases, courts are brought in to resolve internal issues. In case that anyone visited, that province was beginning to see the unfortunate but unavoidable effects of the drought that has devastated crops and livestock in most provinces in South Africa. Not much could be done at the time, but later government tried to put in some assistance. Most beneficiaries of the restitution program prefer cash to land. This is a political scenario brought about by severe levels of poverty, both of the ability to develop land and make it productive, as well as lack of foresight insofar as the long-term benefits of owning land are concerned. Some people do not understand that land appreciates without you doing anything due to external factors around you. More advocacy is needed as a critical component of the restitution program. Accordingly, we strongly suggest that this political challenge should no longer just be addressed through a simple mechanical process of qualifying people for restitution and finally paying them. Rather, people must be offered land only. Otherwise, the state is going to run out of cash and the program is going to crash. I cannot find anything contrary to the Bill of Rights therein, and therefore such a policy will stand a constitutional test. The slow pace of restitution is actually a contravention of Section 25(5) of the Constitution. Government just cannot deliver on its promises of the promised land. I repeat, UDM concurs with the report, but makes these appropriate recommendations. I thank you.
Honorable Phumzile Mabila Ngwenya.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, honorable ministers, honorable deputy ministers, honorable members. Here we're talking about the recap, not the restitution or redistribution, and nothing else. The Portfolio Committee held the public hearings on the implementation of the recap, which was initiated by the department in 2009, and its implementation started in 2010 as a new strategic intervention to ensure sustainable land reform. The main aim of the recap program was to provide Black emerging farmers with social and economic infrastructure and basic resources required to manage the successful agricultural business. Stakeholders raised the success stories about this program, that it has increased production, it has created jobs for the unemployed, provided beneficiaries with technical and agricultural skills, which assisted to rekindle the class of Black commercial farmers. For instance, Izindonga Africa from Mpumalanga, which is managed by youth specializing in poultry production, it's a progressive business. The Selame farm in Northwest, where 9 cycles of broiler production is being produced, is a success story. The Bila Bila CPA in Limpopo, which is specializing in game, crop, and cattle farming, the CPA contributes to community development through monies generated out of the project. That is a success story. The Marinda in Northern Cape, owned by the woman who's the only beneficiary, specializing in sheep and cattle farming, that is a success story. The Langa livestock farmers in Western Cape, they are also progressive. The Kwabe CPA in KZN, it's a success story, which is operating in the communal land. While success stories were mentioned, challenges were also presented by the participants. Some challenges need to be addressed by the beneficiaries of the program, while others are to be addressed by the department. The department is in the process of reviewing the recap program to address those challenges and to work together with other departments to strengthen integrated approach on the post-settlement support given to land reform beneficiaries. This is an important program that provides post-settlement support to land reform beneficiaries as per the resolution of the ANC conference. As the ANC, we support this report on the SPSA. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I'll now recognize the Honorable Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honorable House Chairperson, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to.
Chair?
Oh, okay, EFF?
Yeah, you may note the objection of the EFF.
The objection of the EFF is noted and the report is agreed to. I'll ask the Secretary to read the 14th order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry on colloquium on relationship and impact of transfer pricing on beneficiation or value addition as set out in Industrial Policy Action Plan and on broadening participation as outlined in Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act.
I now recognize the deputy.
On behalf of the acting Chief Whip, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Honorable member.
Chairperson, the DA would like to make a declaration.
Declaration have been requested and agreed to. Honorable Des.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Chairperson and honourable members, the principle in this matter is absolutely simple. Tax revenue which is due to South Africa must come to South Africa's coffers. If there is any company in South Africa that is illegally shifting profits and revenue to low tax or no tax jurisdictions, then they must not only refund the fiscus, but they should face criminal prosecution and the full force of the law. But, Chairperson, it is also true to say that South Africa already has a fairly comprehensive and thorough rules around evasive profit shifting. South Africa regularly ranks among the top 3 and even number 1 in the world for the regulation of our financial markets and our financial industry. It is also absolutely true to say that these regulations should be more enthusiastically implemented and enforced by our government and by the Revenue Service. We support and associate ourselves with the proposals made in the report of the Davis Tax Commission around strengthening enforcement and tightening up loopholes for profit shifting. The extensive Davis Commission report, which is really required reading, takes into account global best practice and the increasing focus that many of the world's developing countries and even developed countries, even Europe and the OECD, is re-looking at the issue of profit shifting. And so should we. Finally, Chairperson, I would say that proper, vigorous enforcement requires an ethically unimpeachable and incorruptible revenue service. Any indication that SARS is itself engaging in illegal activities in an effort to try and stop illegal tax evasion does seriously undermine the credibility of SARS in its fight against illegal profit shifting and undermines the confidence of the business community and the surety of the business community that their illegal actions will carry with them consequences in law. And so the current questions around the conduct of SARS are very unfortunate and undermine the fight against illegal profit shifting in South Africa. Nevertheless, Chairperson, the DA supports the report.
Thank you. EFF. Thank you. Thank you, House Chair. The EFF would like to welcome the announcements by the Minister of Finance in his budget speech when he announced that government will not consider the work of Tax Justice Network and other institutions, instead of blinded absolute reliance on the OECD, which we have said before that they cannot be trusted. The step by the Minister will allow South Africa to be receptive and form part of growing intellectual community that has begun to construct a pro-country's fiscal sovereignty and protection of country's revenue. We are well aware that South Africa is not an island and need to trade internationally. For a very long time, multinational corporations together with the OECD have made nations to just accept that tax avoidance is acceptable as a normal business practice. The committee report fails to capture the substance and spirit of submission by stakeholders, not only the EFF, but also others, except the Department of Trade and Industry, who claim that the phenomenon is fairly new to South Africa. This is what South Africa, through its various agencies, must do to develop a comprehensive solution to illicit financial flows over and above the work that is already being done. 1, South Africa must move toward an anti-tax avoidance legislation which makes tax avoidance completely illegal. 2, companies found to be involved in aggressive tax avoidance like Loan Mill, as recorded by Falam Commission, must be expropriated without compensation and its directors must be jailed. 3, bankers and financial institutions who facilitate and assist the multinational corporations with illicit financial flows and transfer mispricing must be subject to excessive fines, prosecution, and jailing. President must institute a judicial commission of inquiry to specifically look into illicit financial flows from South Africa since 1994. Government and Parliament must establish a cross-agency task team, a multidisciplinary team that must include officials from Treasury, Financial Intelligence Center, SARS, and Reserve Bank to investigate multinational corporations for aggressive tax avoidance and illicit financial flow. Part of the research that must be conducted is to investigate the 6th method that has proven to reduce illicit financial flows and improve revenues. As far as beneficiations is concerned. Thank you very much. Your time has expired. The report can be beefed up and we will support the adoption when such has happened, Chair. Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, House Chair. Transfer pricing has the detrimental knock-on effect of undermining job creation and government's efforts to stabilize the economy and derail efforts of achieving the goals as set out in the National Development Plan. Base erosion and profit sharing is a concern, but so is the loss of foreign investment. And we are pleased that SARS agreed that a balanced response is needed in order to rein in the negative effect of multinational companies' tax avoidance strategies on a fiscal base. We believe as well that more stringent domestic legislative requirements are necessary, but that these must be carefully balanced within the confines and parameters of international law, as well as not negatively impacting on foreign direct investment. The IFP support the report, and we support the advocating of advanced pricing agreements to be considered on transfer pricing between taxpayers and SARS, as this will alleviate the burden of enforcement and collection and encourage fiscal compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other party wishing to make a declaration? ANC?
Thanks, Chairperson. In May 2015, the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry had a colloquium on the relationship and impact of transfer pricing on beneficiation or value addition. Now, although transfer pricing is not illegal, the practice of manipulating prices by a company in order to shift profits from a subsidiary to another part of a company in a different country to avoid taxes is unacceptable. And I think that every party in this House agrees with that. This has an adverse impact on the country's industrialization drive and broadening participation efforts of the government. The committee is of the view that it is fraudulent to reduce profits, to underreport income, and to conduct exchange rate misreporting, as these practices reduce the country's income tax. The reduced revenue as a result of transfer pricing impacts negatively on the following: workers' wages and working conditions, profits available to pay dividends to BEE partners, and the development of social infrastructure in mining towns. Transfer pricing leads to a negative balance sheet that in turn leads to mining charter non-compliance and non-adherence to the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Codes of good practices. Chairperson, the recommendations of the report are as follows: that the Minister should consult the Minister of Mining Resources to ensure that the Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act and any subsequent mining charter is aligned with the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Amendment Act and its associated codes of good practice. And 2, consult with the Minister of Finance to consider measures including tax instruments to mitigate against the impact of transfer pricing on the broader economy in line with the international best practices. I thank you.
Thank you. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The subject for the discussion. The last item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of Honorable Mafu on human rights in the context of building a national democratic society underpinned by the vision of a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous South Africa. I will now invite Honorable Enen Mafu to the podium.
Ndiyabonga sihlalo wendlu ebekekileyo, amalungu alendlu ehloniphekileyo, indwendwe ezibekekileyo, abantu boMzantsi Afrika ngokubanzi. Ukubaluleka kwamalungelo abantu ekwakheni uMzantsi Afrika omtsha apho wonke umuntu eyakuhlala, apho kungekho buhlanga, apho amalungelo abantu onke ejonge ngokulinganayo asinaze sokuchaza ukubaluleka kwakho. Umongameli welizwe obekekileyo umnumzana Jacob Gedleyihlekisa Zuma uyakube ethetha nesizwe ngomhla we-21 kaMarch ngalomba ephaya eThekwini ethetha nani. The African National Congress has throughout its existence promoted human rights, justice and human dignity. These have been always among the key issues that were at the heart of our core of the struggle. The principle of humanity and its inherent values of freedom, equality, and justice for all people, irrespective of race, gender, or social status, have always been contained in the 1923 Bill of Rights, the 1943 African Claims, which all informed the formation of the Congress Alliance. At the Congress of the People in 1955, you will remember the closing statement, and I quote, "These freedoms we will fight for side by side throughout our lives until we have won our liberty," close quote. In the mid-80s, when the country was burning, when human rights violations were at its peak, the ANC issued constitutional guidelines for a democratic South Africa, which contained its human rights-based vision of a post-apartheid South Africa. The ANC also sponsored the Harare Declaration in 1989, which laid the foundation for a negotiated settlement and an establishment of a democratic South Africa. All these were consolidated by the adoption of the Constitution of South Africa in 1996. By the way, not all of us here in this House as political parties were party to the adoption of this Constitution. But some of us, we raise our voice higher as if this Constitution, we were part of adopting it. For us, liberation means engendering freedom of the human spirit, to search for better ways of doing things, to express oneself freely, and to enjoy the creative endeavors of humans. But as we do that, we also know that it is important to say individual freedom means individual responsibility, and collective freedom means collective responsibility. It is very important, therefore, to also remind those that call themselves pseudo-revolutionaries that there is always a titanic struggle between and among the forces representing the old and the new forces seeking to preserve the old order. Very often, these forces enter into unavoidable compromises, which brings up their own challenges. No revolution is worthy of its name if it does not know when to enter into such compromises. We are told that after 22 years of democracy, the ANC must not blame apartheid for our current reality. This assertion seeks to advance the self-serving political proposition that 1994 wiped out everything that was done by apartheid, giving the ANC-led government an unfettered freedom to inscribe its own characters on these alleged blank slates, and this as if there was no compromise made. The ANC's power to forgive is commendable, but we must never be asked to forget. We dare not forget where we are coming from. We remember the heroines and heroines who laid down their lives in order for us to stand here and debate this topic today. They endured the worst human violations, and their families are still suffering from the after effects of these violations. We would remember what Madiba said when he was standing on the dock during the treason trial, and I quote, "During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to the struggle of African people. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if it needs be, it is an ideal of which I am prepared to die. Many ANC activists live for this, and they have died for this ideal." I would like to dedicate this speech, honorable members, to one young cadre of the African National Congress called Nokuthula Simelane. Nokuthula Simelane, who was born in 1960, who became an activist at a young age, disappeared when she was only 23 years old. She had just finished her degree at the University of Swaziland, and she came to Johannesburg, Gauteng, to buy a graduation attire. She was lured into a meeting in Carltonville, and there she was kidnapped. She was taken to Norwood police station and thereafter to the notorious Flag Plus. and she was tortured, and up to today, no body of hers was ever found. The family of Nokuthula went to all the lengths, went to the TRC, went everywhere, trying to find the truth of what happened about this young girl. And up to today, nothing has happened. But we would like to draw your attention to the fact that recently, NPA has resuscitated this case. And as they did, there are 3 accused. Accused number 1 is a man called Musebenzi Khadebe, who is a councillor of the Democratic Alliance in Rhodeport. Until 2 weeks ago, Musebenzi Khadebe was a special branch in Soweto around the 1980s. Now, the question, I'm raising this because the question is, did the DA not know who Musebenzi was? Did the DA not veto its public reps when they are going to put them? Now, how many more of Musebenzi Khadebes are sitting on the ranks of DA? Now, this is for me a very important question. Now, you must remember, one of the things is that for Africans, it is very important to bury your dead. Now, when families are not able to bury their dead, that pain sits on them forever. We would like, therefore, to call on Musebenzi Khadebe of the Democratic Alliance to tell the family of Nokuthula where is the body so that they can be able to bury him. We must commend the Mpumalanga government, who in November 28 at least put a life-size statue in remembrance of Nokuthula. We want also to remind the people that whilst we talk of these things, remember, the Trojan horse case of Western Cape, a DA member is also alleged. Now, what is this? Because what does that say about the DA as an organization? These are the people that say all the time they uphold democracy, they uphold human rights. Really? Oh, please. They are not. Because even their leader, Helen Zille, is the one that always called the people of South Africa refugees in their own land. That's the DA you are talking about. Now, what I want to remind the blacks of South Africa, particularly those today are members of the DA and those that want to vote this organization, I want to remind you what Hendrik Verwoerd said about this. And I quote, he said, "You can beat a Bantu today. He will smile at you tomorrow. Bantus are like monkeys. No matter how you mistreat them, they will always beg to serve you. We must not be afraid of giving the Bantus to vote. They will use that vote to vote for a white man. Bantus, because they are like dogs. They cannot exist without a master. They need the white master to tell them what to do." That's what Verwoerd said, who is the grandfather of the Democratic Alliance, close quote. Therefore, in the Lendlela, kwaye imbongi yakwaXhosa u-SEK Mqhayi wayichaza le nto asibuyi mva sibheka phambili. Watsho ke u-SEK Mqhayi wathi kunamhlanje ilizwe liyazuza. Abantu boMzantsi Afrika baza kuvotela i-African National Congress.
Siyabonga mhlonishwa. Honorable Kado. Order, honorable members. Proceed, Honorable Kado.
House Chair, tomorrow the ANC will try to railroad through this chamber for a second time the appointment of its former MP, Cecil
Order, honorable members.
as Inspector General of Intelligence. This is the man who championed the so-called Secrecy Bill, a pernicious piece of legislation denounced at the United Nations Human Rights Commission. The Secrecy Bill wields a sword against individual freedoms and puts up a shield to protect the state from scrutiny. It is an attack on constitutional democracy. It is an assault on human rights. And now we, as members of this august House, are expected to entrust the bill's most ardent advocate with the oversight of the country's crime intelligence, defense intelligence, and state security authorities. It is, quite frankly, a preposterous proposition. You would be hard-pressed, studying his record, to find a less suitable candidate for the task than Cecil Burgess. In fact, appointing Cecil Burgess as Inspector General of Intelligence would be like putting Herod in charge of the maternity ward at Chris Hani Baragwanath. It will not produce a good story to tell. But such is the story of human rights in South Africa. Our institutional human rights architecture is among the finest in the world, admired far and wide. The bastion is our Constitution. Its pillars are the Chapter 9 institutions supporting constitutional democracy, and the cornerstone is our Bill of Rights. But under this government, the edifice of human rights has become a house of cards. The foundations have been eroded and weakened by state capture, by the ANC's endless factional wars that play themselves out.
Chair.
Honorable Kado, take your seat.
I'm rising on rule number 68. The member is quoting Cecil Burgess, which is the matter which is on the order paper for tomorrow. So he's anticipating the outcome of tomorrow's debate.
Honorable members, Rule 68 talks about anticipation of the discussion. Let me be advised. I'm advised that yes, he was anticipating on a matter of discussion for tomorrow, but already he has moved. Can we allow the member to continue?
Thank you, Chair. The foundations of our human rights edifice have been weakened by state capture, by the ANC's endless factional wars that play themselves out in state institutions like the National Prosecuting Authority and the Hawks, and by the crippling policy of cadre deployment that sees supine, executive-minded, recycled ruling party hacks like Cecil Burgess dumped into positions of power for which they are ill-suited. They are meant to be independent and impartial, but instead...
Chairperson.
Honorable member.
Yeah, he is anticipating again.
Honorable Kado.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Can I address Honorable Kado first? Honorable Kado, please don't anticipate on a topic that is on the order paper for tomorrow. Thank you. Could you please continue?
Madam
Don't
House
do that.
Chair, if I may address you.
Yes, Honorable Steenhuisen.
The Honourable Cardo did not make any reference to the matter on the order paper tomorrow. He said dumped into positions for which is not suitable. That would have been the Nkandla ad hoc committees.
Honourable Steenhuisen.
No, you can't curtail.
Honourable Steenhuisen, you are really now not talking.
House Chair, you are suppressing his right of freedom of speech.
No, Honourable. He actually talked about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Madam.
That's why I want to say to Mr. Kado, continue, Mr. Kado, and refrain from entertaining what will be discussed in the order paper tomorrow.
House Chairperson, may I ask that you examine the Hansard of the last 3 minutes of the speech and you determine for yourself whether in fact he strayed onto the rule of anticipation, rather relying on genocide.
Honourable Member, I've already ruled. There's no need for me to do that.
Thank you, House Chair. These deployees are meant to be independent and impartial, but instead they do the ANC's bidding. The result has been a prolonged onslaught over the past 2 decades on the institutions that underpin and the values that infuse our human rights culture, the values of freedom, fairness and opportunity. Don't take my word for it, take the finance ministers. On Sunday, after the latest bout of unseemly leaking in the ANC's internecine battle for the soul of the state, he accused the hawks of using, and I quote, harassment and intimidatory tactics like the old security police did, of which Honourable Mathu made reference. Things have come to a pretty pass when a man of the stature of Pravin Gordhan compares our top crime-fighting unit to the very worst violators of human rights under apartheid. But what of the supporting pillars in our human rights edifice, the Chapter 9 institutions? Just about the only decent public protector we've ever had is the current one, Advocate Thuli Madonsela. Yet she is vilified by the members opposite because, unlike her predecessors, who turned a blind eye to Sarafina Gate, Oil Gate, Arms Deal Gate, and every other gate the ANC has ever manufactured, she won't cover up for the ruling party. As for the Commission for the Protection and Promotion of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities, has anybody outside of this House ever heard of it? The Commission, formerly known as the Independent Electoral Commission, we shall have to see how, after a litany of recent scandals, it performs under the stewardship of President Zuma's bosom buddy, Glenn Mashinini. And what of the Commission for Gender Equality? Well, the CGE is where the superannuated matrons of the ANC Women's League go to feather their retirement nests. Perhaps, Honourable Mathu, you can go there too. When they grow tired of chasing ambulances and making noises on the sidelines of high-profile court cases, the CGE provides a soft landing. It's where they go to put their collective head in the sand every time President Zuma opens his mouth to make one of his many embarrassing, patriarchal, sexist, misogynistic remarks. Last week, the South African Human Rights Commission released a damning report on the state of human rights. It fingered the ANC government as one of the biggest culprits. The Commission noted how, last year, the government overrode a decision of the High Court, as well as a request of a judge of the International Criminal Court to arrest Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. The Human Rights Commission concluded, and I quote, "These occurrences are worrying for a human rights institution seeking to promote the domestic harmonization of international laws and standards in South Africa." In its report, the Commission also expressed extreme concern with increasingly high levels of xenophobic violence, violence against women, and violence against those protesting government service delivery failures. In fact, if one were to make a detailed study post-96 of how the ANC had respected, protected, promoted, and fulfilled every right in the Bill of Rights, it would make for disconcerting reading. Traditional first-generation blue rights, like property rights and the right to freedom of expression, are under threat from the Expropriation Bill, the securitization of the state, and a broadcaster that believes it serves the state, not the public, and a host of second-generation red rights conducive to social justice, such as the right of access to adequate housing, healthcare, and basic education, including further education, are imperiled. They are undermined by the ANC's crushing failure to unstitch the structural legacy of apartheid and create the conditions for a fair society based on freedom and opportunity. House Chair, the time has come to take a stand against the ANC's woeful record on human rights, and we can start tomorrow by doing the right thing. I thank you.
Honourable Mente, thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Typical of the ANC to introduce such a topic when they reject and object to the motion of Kenny Mutsamai, who is languishing in jail because he has been denied his human right. Chairperson, this country emerged out of very painful past where a racial minority appropriated to themselves the right to decide who was human and who was not. Convinced that they and those who looked like them were human and that black people were not. They demonized our belief systems, desecrated on our names, mocked our language, annexed our land, and forced us into wage labor so that each and every aspect of African life would be dependent on them. They sought to control minute aspects of African life, where they lived, what they eat, and how the Africans related to each other. Any attempt, therefore, at fostering human rights, non-racialism, non-sexism, and democracy would have to dismantle the foundations laid by colonialism and apartheid that still ensures that whites have all the privileges illegitimately bestowed on them by white minority regimes, which were and still are denied to our black people. Our struggle for liberation was for the reclamation of our African personality in its entirety, for the destruction of all the sick and inhuman oppressive tendencies brought about by the settler communities. Only that would guarantee us our human rights and dignity. The struggle was for the uprooting of all the greed introduced to this country by the descendants of Europe, to rid the country of all the oppression that is essentially a European tendency, to do away with the culture of murder and plunder that are synonymous with the development of Europe, and to recreate a society where people would be valued just for being human beings and for being people. How sad it is then that today, 21 years after state power moved from a white repressive regime to black hands, no significant transformation and guarantees on human rights as envisioned by the forebearers of our liberation struggle have taken place. Rather, we have seen under the ANC further entrenchment of the culture of oppression that black people fought against. We have observed that in thought and deed, the ANC has become true descendants and guardians of a white culture of black stealing and elite enrichment. We cannot be disingenuous and talk about human rights while this very same house, we have a deputy president who himself testified to have ordered pointed action to the killing of Marikana miners, whose only sin was to ask for a living wage. We cannot be talking about human rights while the woman who took Zuma to court for rape had to be exiled for the country to escape victimization.
Honorable
we cannot
House
be talking
Chairperson,
about
Honorable
human
House
rights.
Chairperson,
Honorable Mente, can you please take your seat? Honorable Chief Whip.
I think the accusations that the honorable member is making should be substantive, through a substantive motion. We cannot just, she cannot accuse the deputy president and the president for those things without a substantive motion.
Honorable member, I think the ruling is sustained. I mean, the order is sustained. Let us refrain from bringing issues that need substantive motion into our debate. Continue.
We cannot be talking about human rights when black people live in rat-infested shacks in Alexander, Nyanga, Ndantsana, and other labor-concentrated camps whose purpose is to provide a source of cheap labor for white-controlled firms throughout this country. Real human rights lie in our pursuit for justice for the past wrongs. Radical land distribution would offer our people real human rights. Only the EFF can guarantee real human rights. Thank you.
Honorable Nkomo, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The Inkatha Freedom Party is proud to have led the battle to include a Bill of Rights in our democratic constitution. This can be extracted and verified from the CODESA files. We fought this battle at the negotiation table when no one else saw the need for a Bill of Rights in a new South Africa. After struggling so long for freedom, They say the majority government could not possibly fail our people. Today, we give thanks for the IFP's foresight. In a country as diverse and pluralistic as South Africa, with its veritable melting pot of cultures and ethnicity, its young democracy and myriad of social and economic challenges, it is nothing less than a mammoth task of building a caring society by entrenching human rights for all. Yet it is a task that we must be equal to. However, the reality is that 22 years since democracy, South Africa's economy and education system do not work for the majority of our citizens. A significant percentage of black children still do not attend school. Many of those who do attend poorly funded and poorly equipped schools and are often taught by unqualified teachers. Deprived of their basic right to education, these children retain the shackle of ignorance and they become adults. Honorable Chair, as we celebrate our human rights culture, this status quo must change. It must also serve as a reminder that we must also build a strong institutional human rights structure in our country. Our Chapter 9 institutions remain underfunded and need to be accorded greater mechanism of enforcement. These institutions are meant to safeguard our democracy. Instead, the Human Rights Commission lacks teeth, and the Public Protector's Office has often been attacked for doing her work impartially, even in this very House. Honorable Chair, it is also worth noting that the South African Human Rights Commission last week issued a damning critique or a damning report on the state of human rights in our country. In a statement sent to the United Nations Human Rights Commission, the South African Human Rights Commission said that South Africa's commitment to human rights was of great concern, with many groups suffering from abuse of human rights, including women, children, prisoners, indigenous persons, non-nationals, and protesters. It further pointed out that racism was widespread across South Africa, that there was a high level of xenophobic attacks towards non-nationals, migrants, and asylum seekers, and that these factors converged to exacerbate the plight of black women living in poverty.
Honourable Member, your time has now expired.
I thank you, sir, and I would have liked to have taken questions, not a lot of housing
Thank you, Honourable Member. Will you leave the podium? The next speaker is Honourable Ngwabe.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. As South Africans, we often take pride in our Constitution, considered to be one of the most progressive in the world, and firmly anchored in the Bill of Rights. But many rights, as per our Constitution, have been violated. The demon of racism, which we thought was buried with the apartheid system in 1994, has returned. And we find our people being referred to as animals purely because of the color of their skin. The right to education is also shaken. Many students have dropped out of universities because of outstanding fees. Outstanding because they are so expensive, hence the hashtag fees must fall movement. Honorable Chair, we have seen our proud of human rights record rise, but we see it stumbling now. And we ask the question, how long before we see it fall? Where was our proud human rights record when 350,000 people died in South Africa being denied life-saving antiretroviral medicine because the then president of the country was in denial at the time? Where was our proud human rights record when Andres Tatane protested for a basic right to water and was killed for it? And where was our proud human rights record when the blood of miners stained the granite hills at Marikana? Honorable Chair, the illusion of human rights for all has been shattered. The rainbow nation of President Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu reduced to a stark reality of black and white, the color of burn-out fire, shattered black beast against flecks of white ash. To add insult to injury, Our international reputation is in tatters. Cited this morning by the Supreme Court of Appeal, which found that the state has violated our constitution by aiding and abetting a man who stands accused of international gross human rights violation when he should have been arrested. Honorable Chair, we have to face the fact we are losing the moral high ground. The NFP calls upon all peace-loving, patriotic South Africans to come together and vow to protect our human rights against abuse, whether by the state or individuals. Only through unity in our diversity, Chair, will be able to ensure to build a national democratic society, non-racial, non-sexist democratic society underpinned by the core values contained in our Bill of Rights. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Nguni.
Thank you, House Chair. Ilungu le-DA ebelime apha just did nothing to debate. Did nothing to debate but to hurl insults at the president, at the government, at the ANC, at everything. It shows deep-seated anger and hatred. We would suggest that he goes for racism test under oath so that South Africa can be assured that it was not a racist who stood here to hurl insults at our own democratically elected president, to hurl insults at our own government and the ANC.
Honourable Member, will you just take your seat, please? Yes, Honourable Member, why are you rising?
Chairman, on a point of order, if I may address you, the Speaker currently at the podium is casting aspersions on an individual member, calling that person a racist. And I suggest to you that is unparliamentary.
Honourable Deputy Chief Whip, I will check the answer and I will come back with a ruling. Continue, Honourable Member.
It is a privilege, all protocol observes, a privilege to accept the task on behalf of the ANC to say a few words to celebrate the human rights as a fundamental tenet of our struggle to usher in a free South Africa, which is non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous, taking its place alongside the rest of the nations of the world. We start off by lending some words of wisdom from the time-tested fallen giant on the statement of human rights, or human rights, in 1968, who said, I quote, "For the oppressed people of South Africa, the commemoration of the 20th year of Universal Declaration of Human Rights bears a very poignant meaning. In our country, the Declaration of Human Rights is, quote within a quote, treasonable, close that quote, document." That was O.R. Tambo in 1968. This is how far the ANC has come in pursuit of human rights. A glance at our current South African calendar will show it to be recognizing as holidays such important days as the Women's Day, Youth Day, Workers' Day, Day of Reconciliation, and like we are doing today, Human Rights Day, which is due on the 21st of March next week. It is the latter about which we are focused today. Just to give a little bit of background and context, as has been done by my colleague, Honorable Mafu, the ugly demon of human rights abuse in this land dates back to the arrival of the 3 ships via the Cape in 1652. They carried some people's forefathers. Those whose ships broke were the later day colonialists who took inland throughout the country, ravaging with violence, shooting, killing, dispossessing, and ultimately racially demonizing the indigenous inhabitants, the Africans in particular. They changed the political-economic landscape from one end to the other throughout subsequent centuries, leading to the White Republic in 1910, the so-called Union of South Africa. By 1913, they had subsequently passed Notorious Land Act that recognized the appropriation of 87% of productive Arab land to the white minority 5% of the population. The 1948 promulgation of Grand Apartheid sealed off the fate of black people, the Africans, the Indians, and the Coloureds, as subservient to the entrenched system. Thus, no amount of exclamation could deter the white minority junta from continuing with ruthless repression in order to enforce their oppressive system of apartheid. The international community correctly declared white-based apartheid system as crime against humanity. Nonetheless, apartheid rolled out subjugation, including subjugation to all, including the women, the children, the disabled people, the rural poor, and all marginalized. The repression of the system spared no force to enforce its repugnant system, including through various massacres that this country has ever seen. From Sharpeville, Kwalanga, Soweto, Buipatong, Sebukeng, Thokoza, Enguza Hill, Ebisho, the list of ruthless human slaughter under a white racist regime is endless. One massacre after the other was the order of the day. But the tide has turned. From the forefathers to the current ANC-led crop, generation after generation, the people did not sit back and do nothing. Battle cry to battle cry, they fought for freedom. The wisdom of the revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara was instructive. It's as if he was instructive throughout when he says, open quote, if you tremble at every injustice with indignation, then you are a comrade of mine. Now, ukuba ngaba uyancancazela unyashe nayiphina into ekucinezela nokungalingani wena uliqabane lam utsho laqabane uChe Guevara. If you tremble at every injustice with indignation, then you are a comrade of mine. In pursuit of freedom as a human right, the ANC was formed in Mangaung in 1912, and so followed other formations, but were also inspired by a white party in the midst of ruthless oppression that then, who called for a black republic. That was the South African Communist Party. That became the life and death ally of the ANC. These alliance formations were born in struggle, as can be summed up in President O.R. Tambo's words that, I quote, ours is an alliance sealed in blood, close quote. The alliance certainly included SACTU, COSATU, and SANCO, as it crystallized later. The ANC's history is a history of non-violent, human, democratic struggle. Even regarding the armed struggle, the MK's founding manifesto was appropriately contextualized when it said, open quote, there comes a time in the life of any nation when there remains only two choices, submit or fight. We shall submit, it continues, close quote. That's from the MK manifesto. Even when we had to take up arms, we were left with no options. All the doors had been closed, so we could not submit, we had to fight. That's why we are here today. From the 60s to the 90s, the ANC had, in resilience to detentions, kidnappings, killings, burnings, house arrests, unfair trials, etc., reason to define the scientific conception of the human rights struggle for which it stood. The National Democratic Revolution, as conceptualized, therefore, sought to realize human rights for all. And as always been quoted, open quote, liberation of the blacks generally and Africans in particular, close quote. The unbanning of the ANC we have to teach everyone here, especially these benches. The unbanning of the ANC, the release of Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners, came as a result of people's war against the enemy. It never reflected any change in the hearts of the white minority regime. In its struggle, the ANC always valued life. It had called for the no hangings of all on death row. On the other hand, the regime on behalf of white South Africa saw black life as cheap, as valueless. A number of black lives were killed and some disappeared up to this date, including, among others, Dr. Neil Agat, Solomon Mahlangu, Mkhonto, Ashe Godolozi Kauli, and many more. We take this moment to once again condemn the racist criminal Janus Walus, who killed our leader, Martin Tembisile Krisani. Walus does not deserve freedom. He is supposed to rot in jail, at least until he speaks out the truth. We may forgive, but we will never forget. Walus must speak the truth. We can forgive him. Over the past 22 years, the ANC-led government has done a lot for our people, including, as has been alluded to by Honorable Mafu, ushering in a democratic constitution that is appreciated by the whole world. The ANC has helped to wipe the face of violence from our society, which has been so reduced. We like to remember Utatu Sisulu at the occasion of their release when they were welcomed at Nasrec in 1989, when he said, open quote, "We stood for peace in 1912. We stood for peace in 1961. We stand for peace today," that was 1989, "and we will stand for peace tomorrow." That is the ANC stance summed up in the words of that stalwart. Of course, not to be taken for granted, even for the people, the masses, the youth, the ANC has led and ushered in the franchise, the right to vote. The vote is an individual's choice and contributes in determining the direction and leadership in society. A number of related participatory mechanisms and structures and institutions are now in place. The values espoused and accordingly promoted by the ANC include non-racialism, non-sexism, democracy, and so on. The ANC is a standard bearer of the most advanced values in our society. We lead, they follow. We would have loved to show the application, had we had more time, of our notion of freedom and human rights in spatial terms, but we continue to welcome Honorable House Chair. Since the reopening of lodgement, for instance, 130,000 new land claims have been lodged. We jump to conclusion.
I regret your time has expired.
Thank you very much. The ANC leads, the ANC leaves.
The next speaker is the Honorable Majeke.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and honorable members. Nation building that is underpinned by a vision of a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society needs to emphasize the democratic participation of people as a basic human right and responsibility. It will need to build the society, economy, and policy which will meet the basic needs of the people, so that they are not driven by poverty, inequality, unemployment on the one hand, or by the desire to compete for resources and power on the other. This does not mean only producing the formal institutions of democracy, but the underlying culture which recognizes respect for the identities and needs of others. It means development of human rights, political, civil, economic, and social, and the rule of law. Nation building must allow the participation of civil society and develop democratic state that promotes welfare. The advent of a democratic South Africa created a firm foundation for the realization of a truly united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous society. However, it would be naive to expect that the deep racial division and gender inequalities within our society disappeared with the ushering in of a new democratic order. It provided us with tools to collectively do everything to finally bury the scourge of racism and sexism whilst building a united nation. Honorable Chairperson, amongst many actions that would have to be taken to end divisions include firm measures at a legislative level which are meant to prevent, reduce, and finally eliminate these ills. These ills have a terrifying impact on individuals and the nation as a collective. The violence linked with unemployment can reduce self-esteem and hope. Lack of education can cripple minds. Poverty creates chronic insecurity and can disfigure persons. To overcome such situations, government needs to govern in a more socially inclusive way with greater sense of public duty, empathy, and solidarity with the vulnerable people. I thank you.
The next speaker on the list is the Honorable Akota, who have just left the House. I thus call on the Honorable Carter.
Thank you, Chairperson. The topic for this debate has been
Order, honourable members.
from the ANC strategy and tactics document under the heading Building a National Democratic Society, which refers to the journey towards a united, democratic and prosperous South Africa, in which the value of all citizens is measured by the humanity without regard to race, gender and social status, within a democratic and prosperous South Africa. In reality, it is no different to the vision and values and principles set out for South Africa and its people in the preamble to our Constitution, the human rights enshrined therein, and the Constitution, namely, to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on
honourable
democratic
members.
values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. To lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law. To improve the quality of life of all citizens and
honourable members.
Of persons, and build a united and democratic South Africa, able to take its rightful place.
Honourable
as a
members, can you
sovereign
just
state
quiet down,
in the
please?
family
Thank you.
Of nations. The real question to be asked in this debate, instead of casting aspersions on and blaming others, is how has government fared under the majoritarian leadership of the ANC in advancing the building of this national democratic society? Is every citizen equally protected by law, or are some more equal than others? One need to look no further than the President to realize that the political elite are more equal than others through the abuse of organs of the state. Under the leadership of the ruling party, have we created a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people? Is this what we witnessed when students felt that they had no alternative but to storm the gates of Parliament to get government's attention? Under the ANC, has the potential of each person been freed, not with the abject failure of our state schooling system or the unfolding crisis in our universities? How are democratic values being advanced when the ANC in cahoots with the IEC corrupted Tokwe voters' roll? And I can continue. The fact of the matter is that the ANC has failed in achieving its own vision of building a national democratic society. But worse, the ANC has failed to give effect to the vision of building a united, democratic and prosperous South Africa in which the value of all our citizens is measured by their humanity without regard to race, gender and social status, with a democratic and prosperous South Africa.
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
What a shame.
The next speaker is the Honourable Dudley. Honourable Dudley, will you just take your seat? I don't know why the Honourable Kwankwa is rising. Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
My humble apologies, Honourable Dudley. House Chair, I think further down the list, the UDM has another opportunity to make an input. Can we give it to Ntateli Kota since he hasn't read his speech, please?
Has he taken out membership of the UDM? It's party representation in the House, not individual representation. Honourable Dudley, you may continue.
Thank you, Chair. Last year was the worst year in modern history for Christian persecution throughout the world. And with this in mind, the ACDP notes that religion and belief are conspicuous by their absence in the title of today's debate. According to Open Doors, North Korea is the most dangerous place in the world for a Christian, and then Iraq, the first of 35 countries where Islamic extremism has risen to levels that resemble ethnic cleansing. Violent Hindu extremists have now put India on the top 20 list for the first time, and closer to home, militant groups, Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab in Africa, are described as the sinister power behind persecution in 4 African countries. 2 Sudanese Christian men are the latest to be detained by Sudanese authorities, and 3 Egyptian teenagers have been imprisoned for their beliefs. Of course, Christians are not the only ones persecuted, with ongoing conflicts in countries like Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, tensions between Sunnis and Shia Muslims, complaints of mistreatment in Sunni-dominated countries like Saudi Arabia, and complaints of discrimination in the Shia-dominated states of Iraq and Iran. The ACDP welcomes, though, a recent groundbreaking Muslim document, the Marrakesh Declaration, which calls for the protection of Christians from persecution. More than 250 Muslim religious leaders, scholars, and heads of states released the Marrakesh Declaration, a 750-word document calling on Muslim countries to grant religious freedom to non-Muslims. The ACDP also appreciates UK Prime Minister David Cameron, who in his Easter message urged the nation to speak out over the persecution of Christians around the world. We also commend the USA on its efforts and success in obtaining the release of Pastor Saeed Abdini recently. Now, the ACDP calls on the South African government to not only do more through diplomatic channels to intervene and prevent the killing, torture, enslavement, and imprisonment of Christians around the world, but to ensure that freedom of belief and religion is not downplayed in South Africa. And this is not to say that there will not be contentious issues, but with the sanctity of life and freedom to choose as foundational values, the difficult decisions can be weighed and taken in the interests of all who live in South Africa. Article 18 of the Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone shall have the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, including the right to have or adopt a religion or belief of choice, and freedom either individually or in community with others, and in public or private, to manifest religion or belief in worship, observance, practice, and teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Gallo.
Honourable House Chair, when as AIC saw the subject for discussion on the order paper this morning, we were reminded about the good and progressive intentions of the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1995. We all watched the TRC proceedings with great hope that the wounds of the victims of gross human rights violations by the apartheid regime since 1960 to 1994 would be healed by the current democratic government. But seemingly, this government has failed the victims of gross human rights violations in particular, and the people of this country in general, in the last 21 years of democracy. Because of the following: one of the three committees appointed by the TRC was the Reparation and Rehabilitation Committee. This committee was tasked to provide victims with the support to ensure that the TRC process restored dignity, rehabilitation, and healing of victims, their families, and communities. A President's Fund, funded by Parliament and private contributions, was established to pay reparations to victims according to the terms prescribed by the Promotion of National Unity and Reconciliation Act number 34 of 1995. Only few politically connected victims who are benefiting from this fund. The vast majority of the victims are left in the cold. Mrs. Gracia Machel Mandela, when delivering the second annual Desmond Tutu International Peace Lecture in 2012, pointed out that South Africa has still not healed after the end of apartheid and participation in the TRC. As she notes, open quote, South African society is violent, intolerant, accusatory, and angry because it has failed to address the emotional mutilation wrought by apartheid. She further recommended additional TRCs to continue dealing with these issues. The AIC fully supports the recommendation because this will go a long way in ensuring that the extensive recommendations of the TRC are fully implemented and the TRC unit of the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development.
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Point is taken.
The next speaker is the Honourable the Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, responsible for provincial and local government.
Chairperson, honourable members, this year we mark Human Rights Month under the theme South Africa United Against Racism. We honour the martyrs of Sharpeville and Kwalanga, brutally massacred on the 21st of March 1960 while protesting peacefully against apartheid pass laws, leading the United Nations to declare the day as the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. We also remember the youth of 1976 and the Women's March of 1956. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Constitution at Sharpeville on the 10th of December 1996. And there I'd like to pay special tribute to two giants of our struggle, the late Collins Chabane, who 1 year ago tragically passed away. The second, the late Dula Omar, Minister of Justice, who passed away on the 13th of March 2004. Both of them contributed immeasurably to the formulation and the adoption of our Constitution. The Department of Justice and Correctional Services recently released South Africa's draft National Action Plan to combat racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance for public comment. The National Action Plan recognizes that significant progress has been made over 2 decades of freedom, yet there's still much more to be done. South African society remains divided. Many schools and suburbs and places of worship are integrated, but many are not. South Africa remains one of the most unequal economies in the world. The privilege attached to race, class, space, and gender has not been fully reversed. Government programs have had a significant redistributive effect. Close to 60% of government spending is allocated to the social wage. Such expenditure has more than doubled in real terms in the last decade. Per capita health spending has doubled. Free basic education is provided to the poorest 60% of learners. Almost 3 million housing units have been constructed. Access to basic services such as piped water, sanitation, electricity, and refuse removal have all improved, all contributing to a decline in both absolute and relative poverty. However, poverty and inequality still exist. South Africa has not fundamentally touched the structure of the economy in order to effect true economic transformation. 20 years into freedom, we're still grappling with poverty and inequality, and the black majority still own only 3% of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. We need to move faster to achieve meaningful economic emancipation through radical economic transformation. Systemic and inherited racism must be confronted by society, otherwise it will be reproduced and reinforced across generations. It is this inherited psyche of racial prejudice, breakdown in values, inequality of opportunity, and massive poverty, as well as competition for scarce resources, which helps fuel racism and more recently xenophobia. Discrimination on the grounds of sexuality and homophobic violence are also a major problem. The National Action Plan provides South Africa with a comprehensive policy framework for programs and strategies to combat racial discrimination. The Minister of Justice will soon introduce a hate crimes bill, sending a clear message that hate crimes will not be tolerated in South Africa. However, a national action plan against racial discrimination must be a truly national undertaking, involving all elements of government and society. In this regard, we thank the Ahmed Kathrada and Nelson Mandela Foundations, as well as the Anti-Racism Network South Africa, for their role in supporting the National Action Plan. We also commend the initiative by independent newspapers to mobilize society against racism. As deel van hierdie dialoog moet ons self afvra of ons kinders en kleinkinders wil verdoem tot 'n eindelose herhaling van die verdeeldheid en die konflikte van die verlede. En indien ons antwoord nee is, moet ons onsself die volgende vrae afvra. Eerstens, wat doen ons om die geweldige ongelykhede in ons samelewing aan te spreek? Solank as sommige tale uitgespreek word met aksente van armoede, hongersnood en siekte, terwyl infleksies van gemaksigtige selfsug aan ander kleef, sal ons mekaar nooit behoorlik kan hoor nie. Vir solank as wat skakerings van kleur ons vel nie net die strale van die Afrika son waaronder ons gemeenskaplike lotsbestemming lê weerkaats nie, maar ook die skrille kontraste in ons rykdom en welvaart, sal dit pynlik wees om mekaar te aanskou. Vir solank as wat daar 'n ryk wit nasie en 'n arm swart nasie is, sal ons oë skaam bly om mekaar as gelykes te aanskou as broers en susters en medeburgers van een nasie. Tweedens, wat doen ons om dit moontlik te maak vir die jeug en veral vir jong wit Suid-Afrikaners om die konflikte van die verlede te verstaan en te verwerk? Vir solank as wat hulle ouers en hulle ouers se leiers swyg, sal jong wit Suid-Afrikaners wonder wat dit nou eintlik is wat deur regstellende aksie reggestel moet word, en sal die pyn en frustrasie wat eie is aan die onkunde hulle verhoed om te sien dat hulle die geslag in ons geskiedenis is wat die blinkste toekoms voor hulle het, vry om hulle menslike potensiaal ten volle te ontwikkel, vry van die haat en verdeeldheid van die verlede. Vir solank as wat hulle ouers swyg, sal hulle nie verstaan dat wat op hulle rus nie die morele blaam en die onreg en sonde van apartheid is nie, maar die verantwoordelikheid om die voorregte wat apartheid vir hulle meegebring het, in te span om 'n beter en meer regverdige lewe vir almal te skep. Derdens, wat doen ons om te verseker dat die kulturele, godsdiens en taaldiversiteit waarmee ons geseën is, ons nader aan mekaar bring en nie verdeeldheid van die verlede laat voortleef nie. Ben Okri tells us, in a way of being free, that when victims stop seeing themselves as victims and discover the power of transformation, forces are born on this planet. The possibilities of a new history depend on it. What is done with these possibilities depends on how wisely we love, and ultimately we are bound in fate with whomever the other may be. We are bound, in fact, that we have to deal with one another. There's no way around it, close quote. A recent survey by Future Fact suggests that young South Africans agree with Ben Okri. The survey found that the majority of young students, irrespective of party, believe that black and white people in South Africa cannot prosper without each other, though young DA students are less likely to believe this. Josh Cooper of Future Fact, writing in City Press of the 13th of March, observes, and I quote, "It is also fascinating that 64% of EFF students agree or disagree that whites should feel guilty about apartheid. It is no surprise, perhaps, that more than 7 in 10 young DA students have this view, although it is interesting that only 40% of ANC supporters believe this." Cooper goes on to ask, why are young DA students less conciliatory? Has the DA somehow been instrumental in cementing this view through its policies? Or is this a generation that is reluctant to take responsibility for the horrible things that happened in South Africa before they were born? Josh Cooper might find answers to some of his questions in an article by Gillard Isaacs, a researcher at Wits University. Isaacs asks, in An Open Society for Some, do we not also need radical wealth redistribution in order to give everyone a fair shot? The DA's position on this spectrum is confused. On the one hand, its policy document acknowledges that the debilitating consequences of poverty, poor education, lack of access to basic health care and employment limit the ability to enjoy freedom. On the other hand, the remedy offered is paper thin. It does not speak about equal opportunity, but simply opportunity for all. And that opportunity only extends as far as the chance to develop one's capabilities, with an emphasis placed on education and skills development. Essentially, everyone in the race gets to go to boot camp, and no formal discrimination is permitted. But the benefits which inherited privilege provides and the many handicaps that disadvantage bring are left unchallenged. The DA's flip-flop, and ultimate rejection of the employment equity bill last year is a good example. In the words of Helen Ziller, empowerment strategies that broaden opportunities and create jobs for individuals are in, but systematic intervention on behalf of a disadvantaged group is out. The DA speaks of every person as being equal, but nowhere in its official platform does it speak of a more equal society. Indeed, as underlying philosophical approach is completely incompatible with the latter, close quote. Ultimately, genuine opportunity for all not only creates a more equal society, but is also possible on the basis of radical policies that simultaneously pursue creating equal opportunities and far more equal starting points. Surely, we want a world where none of us enter the arena with only one leg. This is why the ANC is committed to building a national democratic society in line with the Constitution and the National Development Plan. Both documents trace their roots to the Freedom Charter and the Africans' claims. The National Development Plan envisages that by 2030, South Africa will be more conscious of the things that they have in common than their differences. Their lived experiences will progressively undermine and cut across the divisions of race, gender, space, and class. The nation will be more accepting of people's multiple identities. Ben Okri makes the point that, and I quote, the way we see the other is connected to the way that we see ourselves. The other is ourselves as the stranger. The poet Mbuyiseni Oswald Mchali makes the same point in his poem, Izwi Ivela la Kwabafileyo, a voice from the dead. Ngalizwa ngise butongweni, lingibiza ngokuhlebeza, kwaku ngumama, ekuluma etuneni lake, ndodana yami, aliko izulu phezu kwamafu, ini, yebo, izulu liphakathi enhliziweni yakho. uNkulunkulu akasiwo umfanekiso onentshebe emhlophe njengeqhwa. Ini, yebo, uNkulunkulu yisigoga sisinqibi esibazalele egumbini lesithaladi. Asikho isihogo esivutha ngesibabuli netshe eliqoqayo. Ini, yebo, isihogo siyinzondo elokoza phakathi esweni lakho. Yes, indeed, hell is the hate flickering in our eyes. Let us reject this hell. Let us reject this hate. Let us, as the elected representatives of our people in this parliament, say that we are united against racism. As the ANC, we say, asina mona, asina nzondo, siyayidumisa iningizimu Africa. We call upon all South Africans to join us in doing so. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order, Honourable Members. Order. The next speaker is the Honourable Malatsi. Honourable Malatsi, before you continue, I want to request your colleague at the back who have been standing throughout the last 10 minutes to take up his seat, please. Honourable members, it's a general request that when you enter the House, just take up your seat. I don't think so. It's also disrespectful, Chief Whip, and I wish you to address it. And generally that when members stand with their back to the chair, it is wrong. It's disrespectful to the speaker at the podium and also to the chairperson. Continue, Honourable Member.
Thanks, House Chair. Honourable Mafu, it is not about who was there when the Constitution was adopted. It is about who upholds its best. You and the ANC government have to be taken to court to respect the Constitution. But if you need a reminder of who the most formidable functionaries of the apartheid government are today, they sit amongst your benches. The Honourable Killian, the Honourable Krunov, the Honourable Landes, and the Honourable Oosthuizen here. But then again, it is always the emptiest vessels that make the loudest noise. Honourable Speaker, the enjoyment of human rights by all the people at all times can be the springboard for a vibrant democracy and a fair society, which is what makes this debate even more important. It is an opportunity for us to optimize by reflecting honestly on the progress we have made in living up to the aspirations of our Bill of Rights and where we have come short in realizing the promise of a rainbow nation. But honestly, in 2016, can we claim that we are a non-racial society under an ANC government when ANC MPs and a deputy minister spew the most racist drivel on this podium? We acknowledge that racism remains the stain that contaminates our struggle for reconciliation. It is therefore incumbent upon all of us to condemn it at all times when it occurs, to punish its perpetuators, and of course, Minister, to unite against it at all times. If we do this, we'll lay a solid foundation for a fair society. But can we also claim that we are a non-sexist society when women under an ANC government still earn on average 15% less than men for doing the same job? And whether you are a feminist or not, it is totally unacceptable that in this day and age, people are discriminated against both in remuneration on the basis of their gender. As the DA, we recognize the need to redress this. This is why at the heart of our fairness policy documents are key policy interventions to uplift, empower, and protect women from gender discrimination so that they too can have a fair chance for a better life. Because the DA understands that having a job for the 8.3 million jobless South Africans is the ticket they only have out of joblessness. Because without the opportunity to work, there is no prospect for a better life. This is why where we govern, service delivery is underpinned by the value of fairness. For example, in the city of Cape Town, we provide the most expansive package of free basic services for those who can't afford them, Honorable Member. And as a caring government, we go beyond the normal standards of service delivery to improve the quality of lives. Because we believe that quality services restore the dignity of our people. And one shining example of that is how the city of Cape Town transfers title deeds to occupants of council rental stock in Scottsdene, in Makassar, in Kwalanga, who were previously unable to own these properties because of the same government that some of your members represented, so that we can redress the legacy of apartheid housing. Because it is just and right that those who were previously prevented from occupying these properties can now own them and have them as security. Unfortunately, this is only an exception where the DA governs. In the constituency I serve in Guyane, in Ward 7, in a village called Siandini, and I'm sure the former speaker of the Guyane municipality will know this, in a village called Siandini, the community has, for 4 years, endured sharing water with livestock from the same river because the Guyane municipality has failed to invest properly in water supply infrastructure. And in 2016, it should be a shame for all of us here that there are some people that access to free drinkable water is an elusive privilege to them. Honorable Speaker, it all starts with ethical leadership from all of us. Unethical leadership breeds corruption. It cheats service delivery and it steals from the poor. This can only change when we punish corrupt people instead of rewarding them. And this goes directly to the ANC. If you claim to care about human rights of poor South Africans, why do you reward individuals who presided over provincial governments that inflicted the most brutal assault on human rights by forwarding them to Parliament? One such example is the former premier of my home province, Limpopo, Honorable Castle Matale, who sits over there, who presided over the worst performing provincial government in the history of our democracy. Yet today, they sit comfortably on this side of the House.
Honorable Member, will you take your seat, please? Why are you rising, Honorable Member?
The Honorable Member has accused the former Premier of Limpopo, and that needs a substantial motion. So
that is correct, Honorable Member. If you refer to an Honorable Member of the House, it requires a substantive motion and you must submit it to the table. You cannot just make a general remark over it. Continue, Honorable Member.
Honorable House Chair, it was under the premiership of Honorable Castle Matale that the
Honorable
provincial
Member, I've
government
made a ruling in this regard.
was put under administration.
Honorable Member, I made a ruling and you're ignoring the ruling. You must withdraw that statement.
Honorable Chairperson, the former Premier of the
Honorable
Limpopo
Member, you
provincial
must
government.
withdraw that statement. I'm waiting for you to withdraw that statement and submit a substantive motion. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable member, you must withdraw the statement and submit a substantive motion with regards to what we have said about the honorable member of the House.
House Chair, I withdraw, but
Honorable member, you must withdraw unconditionally. Order, honorable members. Honorable member. You must withdraw unconditionally, honorable member.
Honorable House Chair, I was wrapping up in my home language.
Honorable member, I'm asking now for you for the last time to withdraw.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Your time is expired. The next speaker is the Honorable Mafu. All honorable members.
Enkosi mhlali ngaphambili.
All the honorable members.
Abantu baseMzantsi Afrika bayazazi apho basuka khona kwaye bayamazi umsindisi wabo. Ukhongoloze walwele amalungelo enu. Kwaye ndazi ngokumhlophe okokuba xa kuthe kwafika elo thuba lokuba nivotele urhulumente bamakhaya anizokuyenza impazamo. Niza kuvotela iAfrican National Congress. Nizawuphinda nibonise ukuyithemba iANC kuba niyayazi ukuba isoloko secaleni kwenu. Akakho omnye umuntu okhusela amalungelo enu ngaphandle kweAfrican National Congress. Hambani ke niyokuvota xa kufika ixesha loba nivota. Andizokuphendula ngamandla kubantu abebephetha apha kodwa ndiyafuna ukutsho kwabantu bangamalungu omqokozo bomvu okokuba amalungelo abantu ahamba nokubhatala imali yesondlo. Ndiyafuna ukutsho kwaba bantu bathi ekugqibeleni thina apha asiphazami siyazi apho sibheka khona. Sikhumbula apho kukho oogqirha kwakusithiwa ngoogqirha bokufa aka Dr. Death aka Dr. Basson esaziyo into kokubana kwathwa bagcine intsholongwane yokuhlaba abantu abamnyama. Ningayenzi impazamo bantu boMzantsi Afrika. Mnye umsindisi wenu iAfrican National Congress, iDemocratic Alliance soze inisendawo, iEFF soze inisendawo, iNFP soze inisendawo, iIFP soze inisendawo. Ambani nivotele iAfrican National Congress.
Order, honorable members.
Chairperson.
Why are you rising, Honorable Chief Whip?
I was just going to ask if you'd be able to ask the Speaker to speak up a bit. We were struggling to
Honorable
hear
member,
her.
that's a bit too late for that now. Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of the day. The House is adjourned.